Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Ichigo Awakens in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 96, Hounds and Magic. With Orium. Tatsuki was being trained by Son Goku, Uriah said, combing through shelves of mythological texts. We've all encountered people of different myths and legends, and so far I've no reason to doubt if any of these legends are false. At worst, I'm expecting mildly inaccurate. It was a full week after Uriah's fight with the Stern Ritter for the city of London, and life returned to normal, for the normal people. The people was Reverse London, and the Pendragon family were doing overtime to ensure that the damage was kept to a minimum, something that Orium was eager to help out with. Nemia was already leaving to catch up with Chad and Jackie to take Kiriko into intensive care back in Soul Society, leaving the two friends to catch up and help plan for Orium's next journey. Putting our bets on that, I believe you should head for the Isle of Sky. Is that where I can find Titania? Orium asked excitedly, thinking to all the cute fairies in European folklore. Land of magic, here I come. I'm not sure if Titania's real, Orium, and that's not who you'll be looking for, Uriah said, forgetting how excitable Orium got. He found the book he was looking for and brought it over to a dejected Orium, quietly drawing circles with her finger. The Isle of Sky is supposed to be the home Scat Hatch, a legendary immortal warrior who commands the Land of Shadows. From what I've read, she's likely join our side if we can actually find her. That talk was almost a week ago, and Orium reached the isle that rested in the northwestern part of Scotland. The journey was easy with the help of her spirits, but she could see why it would be a challenge to those in olden times. The sea was rough and the rocky terrain seemed quite unforgiving. If she didn't have Ventus to fly with, Aqua to calm the waters, or even her Shun Rika, she doubted that she could even make the journey. According to the legends, the only requirement for an audience was to find Dunscath and get the gatekeeper to open the way. Unfortunately, with the passage of time, it was clear that Scat Hatch would be hidden by whatever means were available to her, and Orium was not sure how to find even a hint. I can't even sense any Reish, she began to think before actually sensing a disturbance in the air. Quincy, she whispered before flying to where she sensed it, the lone mountain range on the island. She was going there with all haste before slowing down the moment she sensed a battle going on. When she arrived, she found a force of 10 soldats surrounding a man with blue hair in a short ponytail and wearing rough hunting armor with a fully armored left arm, pauldrons, and wielding a red spear. Orium gave a cursory glance and found 5 other soldats were already dead, so she decided to sit and wait. If it got too bad for the spearman, then she would intervene. The man himself fought like a beast, fast and savage, almost immediately running through another Quincy before the others could react. However, that seemed to be part of their plan, as the one that was impaled also pulled out some Jinto. Feel the wrath of battle and accept this sacred chalice, Heizan. He called out before throwing the silver tubes at the lancer, who was already jumping back. The blue warrior swung his spear quickly, knocking some aside and dispelling the attack, but it seemed that the use of the Jinto was apparently a distraction. As the rest of the Quincy opened fire, Orium even saw a few of them preparing a Springer and backed away a little bit. From what she saw, no arrow in his line of sight could touch him, but he couldn't keep his eyes on all the arrows and got shot by quite a few arrows. Despite the dozen of arrows in his being, he still held firm by trying to block and dodge all he could, but he was trapped in the center while the Springer was finally activated and engulfing him in a large explosion of light and heat. Everyone waited as the smoke rose, no one noticing the lack of wind from Ventus's interference as they waited to see the aftermath of the attack. He's a sturdy one, Orium thought as the spearman suddenly burst out of the tower of smoke, moving at speeds that were comparable to Shunpo, going back and forth among the different soldats and landing a killing blow on each. The last one tried to dodge, but was somehow impaled when it looked like it flew over his one, surprising Orium. Maybe he can help me, she decided as she began drifting down, just as the blue warrior fell to his knees. Sutton Kishun, I reject, she calmly said, having a yam, and Shun-O moved to engulf the spearman in a healing prism and to trap him. What the hell? The man shouted, pushing himself to slash at the barrier and getting shot back in response. It'd be best if you don't do that, Orium said as she touched down just a few feet away. Even if you weren't badly injured, that barrier is nearly impenetrable. Besides, you need some time inside. She pointed at his body, making him look and gawk in amazement as his injuries slowly healed. "I've come here looking for Dunscath and Scathatch, and so were my enemies it seems. Can I have your name and am I close to my goal?" she asked with a smile, making the warrior drop his guard fairly quickly. "I'm the current Ichigo, and yes. Yes you are," the now named Ichigo answered. "I can take you to Dunscath when I'm healed. I'm sure my master wouldn't mind." Orium nodded as the healing shield glowed brighter and the man was almost instantly healed. "That's handy. Thanks," she said cheerfully, before taking a confused expression. "Wait, current. Ichigo means, Hound of Kilin, a name taken by the original that eventually became a title of the strongest generation of Master's students," he explained as Orium dispelled her healing barrier and released the hound. He took a few moments to stretch out and check his condition, picking up his spear once he was satisfied. "Now, answer some questions of mine. Who were those white archers and why were they here?" he said, swiping his spear and leaving glowing runes in the air, creating a portal that revealed a woman. "Those were the Quincy, a race of humans that could harness spirit energy, disrupted the balance of souls, and threatened the existence of the world," the woman said as she gestured the pair to follow her. "Strange. I thought they all died in that war with the Shinigami." The woman was extremely beautiful and exotic, with long purple hair and crimson red eyes, wearing a tight full bodysuit that showed off all of her curves, and she walked with the grace of a true warrior queen. Orium felt like she was in the presence of Yamamoto with all the power that the woman before her exuded. "I am Scathatch, and I welcome you to Dunscath," she said, revealing an elegantly furnished hall that looked like how Anohana might have decorated during her days as the first Kenpeki. "Now, who are you and why did you come here?" "My name is Orium, the girl greeted with a smile. "I came here asking if you would help us defeat the Vandenreich." "Sure," Scathatch said immediately. "I know this doesn't sound like your problem, but..." "Really? That easy?" Orium asked, surprised that the warrior queen would agree so easily. "You don't want to test me? Have me fight someone? Prove I'm worthy of your aid? I feel like we're going off script. I should have a challenge to overcome." "Kid, I've lived a long life and I've been bored for so long," the immortal responded. "I've spent these days training anyone crazy enough to climb up my mountain because I've had nothing else better to do." She released a sigh. "I'm a warrior with no one to fight. Can you imagine how boring that is?" Scathatch lamented, making Orium come up and put a hand on her shoulder. "I appreciate this." The Onmyoji then leaned in closer. "But, my boyfriend is pretty strong. Help us out and I bet he'd fight you. You feel close to his level." That made the Celtic woman perk up. "Is he?" she asked, excitedly. "And you think he's stronger than me?" "I should warn you little girl," Scathatch leaned in to whisper sultry, "I only invite strong men to my bedchambers." "Don't forget to invite me," Orium said with an equally sultry smile. "Oh ho! I like you!" Scathatch exclaimed. "See you Kilane, grab your gear. I'm writing Dire Muet his training schedule for our absence. We're going to war." Chapter 97, Calm Before the Storm. Kingdom of Las Noches. The typical day of nothingness in the desert sands of the Land of Hollows and the thunderous clangs and booms of training were stilled when a force of Vastolord thought to invade the kingdom. It wasn't the first time it happened and it likely wouldn't be the last, as these events have been happening rather sporadically ever since Ichigo left. The worst single attack was Arturo, the worst group assault was happening now. 100 Vastolord looking to conquer Las Noches and claim dominion of all Hueco Mundo. "Hey, are we still just sending out one person?" Grimjo asked, grinning at the challenge to come. He, along with Starkey, Neliel, and Ulquira, were standing on a tower and watching the invading army come at the fortress. "Because I think it's my turn now." He began glowing with power, eager for an outlet to burn through. "We were only repelling those attacks in such a risky manner to achieve Tercera Etapa," Nell answered as the army continued to advance on them. "The captain commander sent the Hogyaka here for the past few months specifically because of its involvement with Ulquira's ascension." The min-haired girl then sighed. I just wished I was able to achieve Segunda Etapa before that infused form. Just be glad that the Hogyaku acknowledged us enough to even give us that power so easily. Stark yawned out as Lilynet appeared at his side, looking less like a child and more like a young teen. I'm not sure I have it in me to do what Ulquiorra did with that Arturo guy. Well, you'll have to show off what you've got anyway. The smaller Arankar said, pointing a thumb at the coming army of Minos. They ain't interested in submitting unless it's our surrender. To which, I just laughed. An action Grimjo just performed as he glowed an ethereal blue while grinning savagely. Then let me go have some fun, he said before flashing into his new form. His hollow mask was gone and his hair grew to his legs, turning almost white in color. His chest was decorated in black tattoos that seemed like they were fire, his waist down was covered in white fur with jaguar spots that shifted to black on his ankles, which had black blades on the shins. His hands became black claws that seemed like they could tear through anything with ease, and he now sported a second tail with both burning with reishi, along with his eyebrows, ankle blades, and the top of his forehead. I've been itching to use this power more. Sometimes you remind me of Neutra, Neliel said, glowing a fiery pink as she began her own transformation. She turned into her centaur form, only bigger and sturdier, and was kept modest only by fur from her horse body up to her chest. She lost her mask and gained 4 horns on her head, with glowing pink marks on her body. Her horse tail burned with pink reishi, and in her hand was a hollow handle that generated a adjusting lance of burning pink reishi. Not the worst parts, like the misogyny and the hypocritical death-seeking, but the lust of battle for the sake of fighting. I say we end this quickly and get back to helping the others get their own Hogyaku forms. Stark voted, resting a hand on Lilynet's shoulder and merging themselves together. Like Grimjo and Neliel, his clothes burned away and was replaced with reishi in the form of a black sleeveless vest and pants. His forearms also turned black with a gray pattern rising from his middle and ring fingers. His usual resurrection's eye patch was now burning blackish blue riot soot, his skin turned pale, his hair now knee-length and gray with reishi flowing from the tip, but the biggest change was a second hole on his stomach. The original hole on his chest was a bright blue while the one below was bright green, each with segmented reishi like a bandolier connecting to his guns, which were now black one-handed Henry rifles with silver wolf skulls on the rifle butts. We don't have the luxury of time. Remember? Indeed. Ulquiorra agreed as he changed to his own Hogyaku form. Let's end this. Each Arankar held out their hand or weapon and fired a Ciro at the 100 Vastolord, reduced to 2 in an instant as they barely escaped the multicolored blast that left a massive black gash in the desert landscape. How are they, Starkey? The bat asked the coyote, who squinted with his one eye. Looks like they'll live. Hard to say when they're 100 kilometers away. They all changed back to their normal forms and started their trip back to the training grounds of Las Noches. Should have just sent Grimjo out. Holding back this much is so annoying. Soul Society SRDI, Project Spearhead. Spearhead Log, number 127. Progress into Reggae development has been improving with various increase in abilities, but strain on the bodies itself has been the biggest limitation on that front. Stronger bodies and minds are always desired. The Frankenstein program is proving to be moderately successful, but the main use out of our 2 living units is to be cute. Raises moral and motivation, but I wish they could be thought of as more than just cute. Recently, Ichigo Kurosaka sent us a surprising specimen that could further assist us in improving our Reggae. A taiga that resembles a jikin with a body that could alter its form. I'm still impressed that such weapons and tools could be made in that world. End log. Nozomi Kyujo said as she closed the recording for her work in Project Spearhead and readied the next log and started recording, combing through the project data on her computer. Subhead of Taiga Research, Nozomi Kyujo. Log, 57. As impressed as I am with the taiga, I am also greatly annoyed by them as well. Some can be recreated while others prove to be more difficult without the proper materials. Example of one we can do is Pumpkin, a multi-purpose rifle that absorbs and shoots out Ryoryoka much like the Quincy and is a very taxing weapon to use. It's a purely mechanical device that they only managed to create with a crystal that could absorb and expel reishi. Example of one we can't is that Incurgio, the ever-evolving armor made from a dragon of the same abilities. Organic in nature, All we really need is the armor shift and not the adaptation ability. It does seem nice though. Then a loud crash followed by a few screams could be heard, some saying the Hikatonkaiers is loose. That dog ate Shiki. Nozomi sighed and grabbed her Zanpakuto. End log. Mayuri's playground. Some time ago, I thought I did all the research I needed to do on the Quincy. The twisted master of the underground lab said as he slowly cut open Jill de Rice, making the Sternritter scream into his gag. But then you Sternritters appear, proving that there is always something new to learn. Then you Quincy break the rules and trespass into other territories, but it lets me experiment on new test subjects. He glanced over to sample jars recovered from Greece in a very black op that the Onmitsukido performed in Greece, retrieving monster corpses and the deceased body of Jason after the Quincy killed him, all achieved with the help of the chameleon Jigai, allowing them to go in undetected. Let's see what else I can learn. Mayuri was about to open up Jill's chest when one of his starfish monsters burst out and wrapped around Mayuri's face. Instead of freaking out and calmly taking the ever-increasing grip of the monster, Mayuri reached up with a hand cackling with electricity and grabbed the monster, frying it in his touch. You just gave me incentive to take my time. Kuratsuki hissed. Does it have to be so crude, Mayuri? Tsukishima asked, walking in while reading his book. And isn't interrogation my job? Shouldn't I get the Sternritter first? The Fullbringer asked as Mayuri waved him off. You can have him when I'm done, he said before noticing the slight pallor to Rice, getting a hiss of disappointment. Guess that'll take longer. Maybe he used his own blood to give that last monster its form. The lieutenant speculated, taking a needle and drawing a bit of blood from the Quincy's arm. If you're going to be down here, make yourself useful and do some analysis on this sample. I'm going to do some tests on the other test subject. He then put Jill on a special foredrip that would replenish the Sternritter's blood while also putting him to sleep, then walked into a different room with a Quincy prisoner that was recovered from the Greece operation. MMMM. MMM. The soldat tried to scream through duct tape, a lean man with a shaved head yet still looked like a fresh recruit. Save your breath. I'll need it for when you describe what it's like to have your soul rot away. Mayuri said before ripping off the tape and getting a pain scream in response. Now, which Reishi injection do you think we should start with? Regular hollow, one of the Minos Grande, Aaron Carr, or the really interesting one? He said, grinning savagely. If you're looking for answers, then you're wasting your time. The soldat cried out, trying to sound brave. And nothing you can do will get me to betray His Majesty. We already got enough from those Sternritters Wiwak sent to spy on Ichigo and Uryu. Mayuri answered, grabbing Reishi extract from a low-level hollow. And I doubt a bottom-of-the-barrel grunt has anything worthwhile to share. Just then, the Quincy began laughing. You think that any Quincy would betray our king? He said, madly grinning. Sternritters E, H, and T did their job, and laid the seeds for the destruction of Soul Society. He started laughing again. Mayuri injected the Reishi into a spray nozzle and fired in the face of the Quincy. The effects were instantaneous as he began convulsing, thrashing, and screaming in agony. I'll be back later to see how this goes. The scientist promised as he walked out of that room and into one where Tsukishima was laying on a medical bed, barely breathing, with a book and pen that shifted into his bookmark on the ground. The bed had all the monitors tracking his vitals in a number that read 38. I think we may have underestimated this ability of yours. To think it cost that many jiken. At least. I'm still alive. Tsukishima weakly muttered, sounding like anything might kill him. Was it successful? Possibly. Mayuri admitted, typing some commands and getting Tsukishima to give a relieved sigh. What did you write? Silence was his answer as Tsukishima fell asleep. Book of the End, Editing Individual Memories, and Scribe of Eternity. Mayuri thought, naming Tsukishima's new ability they just tested. If this is successful, then Uryu will never have a better chance. He left the room, after confirming the Fullbringer would not die and was merely resting, to get back to the Quincy he poisoned with hollow Reishi. He almost didn't make it as the hollow hole was almost complete. With Yamamoto. The deadline is fast approaching. Yamamoto thought, going over the reports of what has been happening as of late. Those kids should be returning soon. Ichigo, my student, I hope your own training has been going well. He could only think and pray that Ichigo was nearing the end of his journey in the alternate dimension and would soon return, hopefully to have one last carefree day before the final war of the Vandenreich. Such thoughts weighed heavy on his mind, and he was thankful when Urahara walked in, carrying a few files for his report. Chemical weapons are mild compared to what Mayuri just did. The scientist immediately groaned out, setting down the files and pulling out a red vial that he set in front of Yamamoto. After testing and comparing different levels of hollow reishi, either the test subject couldn't handle the continued stress or Mayuri made a reishi gas that causes every single vein inside a Quincy's body to explode. Either way, we're currently down to the one Sternritter, so we'll be stopping that experiment for now. He shuffled the papers a bit. Also, it seems that the Tsukishima experiment may be a success, but we'd need more Quincy to be completely sure, and that's not even touching the severe toll it took on Tsukishima. Though we've probably figured out a method to grant Fullbringers some leeway to using their strongest abilities. That is good news. The old dragon nodded, taking the two files and sorting them out. Hopefully, this war will be less bloody. I've too many regrets as it is. Ichigo will not approve. Urahara said, immediately making the atmosphere more tense while Yamamoto continued his work. About either plan. His approval does not matter, Genri Yusai plainly stated, it's Uriu's choice, and unlike Ichigo, that boy will do every dirty action that Ichigo is too pure to do himself. As for the other, I've made up my mind a long time ago. My student should be grateful for that. Anything else? He asked, making Kisuk take out a small stack of papers titled, Dragons in Soul Society. Because of his prolonged stay with the Wingbind Agency, Uriu decided to write a thesis paper on eventually bringing dragons to Soul Society. I've made copies and sent them to everyone that would need to see it. All the current political heads and most of the captains. Not Zaraki, he wouldn't care. And your opinion? The head captain asked, opening an eye to the scientist. We should take it slowly, and only after the war. Urahara said, earning a nod from Yamamoto. Then you are dismissed. Kisuk nodded and left the aged dragon. Shortly after his departure, Kojiro Sasakaiba appeared behind him. Do you have it? Kojiro said nothing as he passed the scroll to Yamamoto, who opened it, and his expression became more hardened than before. I had an idea, but this is worse. He closed and sealed the scroll before taking out his calligraphy set and got to work, writing the one thing no one must know of until the time is right. His last will and testament. Chapter 98, Everyone's Return. Urahara Shoten / Squad 15 Barracks. Almost 2 years since the death of Aizen. Almost 2 years since they had begun full preparations for the return of the Quincy. Almost 2 years since Ichigo, Uriu, Chad, Tatsuki, and Orium left Japan to train. Everyone was dedicating themselves fully to their efforts for the war. Every day ended in blood, sweat, and tears from constantly pushing the limits of their abilities and preparations. All the medics were pushing the realms of the healing arts, the scientists were endlessly thinking of new methods to fight the Quincy, anyone capable of being a Soul Reaper tried their hardest to attain the power of Shikai, and Bankai became a requirement for lieutenants. The only thing that seemed really out of place was the lack of hollows. In the past 2 years since Ichigo claimed the throne of Las Noches, hollow attacks have been steadily dropping to just once a week. Now there hasn't been a hollow sighting in months. Some suspect it to be the quality work of Squad 16, but Junichi Maru wasn't sure about that. After a few attacks from various Minos, Hueco Mundo went oddly silent as well. The only exception were 2 Arankar refugees by the names of Asciaro Ebern and Lutters Freegan, neither of whom Jin trusted and was having watched at all times. Manpower he could only spare because of Rudborn's specific ability. But now the clock was ticking and the projected date of the Quincy's full arrival was coming close. Despite the Kido spell Urahara made to separate them from the Soul Society, they've sent groups into the living world and after Ichigo as well. So far they've successfully managed to best every Sternritter and Quincy squad that were found, but Waiwak and his best were soon to come. Someone that Yamamoto himself remained wary of even now, after all the training and preparations done specifically to kill him. All non-combatants were sent to bunkers while all Shinigami in training were sent to the Urahara Shoten to stay out of the fight and continue their studies under the tutelage of the Shinigami in his Hein's command. This is where we find Yuzo, now with shoulder-length pigtails held by pink baubles in a Sailor Fuku uniform, waiting for the next arrival with her twin sister Karen, who is wearing the same blue and white uniform with her hair longer and in a ponytail. The only one that still hasn't returned was their own Quincy cousin. The first was Tatsuki, whose hair grew past her shoulders and less spiky, who brought with her an albino man named Karna who was wearing a ragged cloak. After her was Chad and Jackie, with Chad having grown a thin goatee, along with Achilles, a man with spiky blonde hair wearing black jeans, white shirt, and vest, Atlanta, a woman in a black and pale green dress with a hairband hiding her cat ears and wearing her tail like a belt, and a shy child called Medea, wearing a lavender Greek chiton and carrying a moon-themed staff. Orium was next, and she grew her hair longer and wavier with a larger bust, bringing a man with long blue hair named Ichigo, who was wearing black pants and a hideous green and orange shirt. With their new comrades they also brought new techniques that they had to chronicle quickly, new spells and fighting techniques that might prove useful. Anohana took a shine to Medea very quickly, and her motherly attitude soon put the young spellcaster at ease and got her to separate from Achilles in Atlanta. Ichigo joined Zaraki's squad and immediately started fighting Ikeku and becoming fast friends. Achilles was tempted to join him, but Kiraka won the Greek over with a few drinks. Karna joined Squad 9 and that was that, and Atlanta still hasn't joined a squad as she's been spending most of her time trying to convince Toshiro to stay out of the fight because he was a child in her eyes until he explained how Shinigami age, making her apologize for her rudeness. Tatsuki brought her training in Toki from Sun Wukong to the Onmitsu Kido Corps, while Orium brought what rune magic she learned to the Kido Corps. What do you think is taking him so long? Karen asked, grabbing herself and her sister a drink as they waited for their cousin. Orium was further away, so why is he late? Uriah said that he wanted to finish up his new gun and start planning for dragons in Soul Society. Yuzo defended, still the more patient sibling of the two. Plus, he was the only one sent for actual intelligence gathering. Too bad we didn't get much on the Vandenreich. The other twin sighed, leaning back to take a sip of her soda. You know they're going to win. Right. Oh, of course. Uni-chan and Uri together can beat anyone. Yuzo said, both sisters knowing that they're masking their own worries. Plus, they have all their friends, the members of the Godei, Mom and Dad, the Aaron Car, and Dash. And we're still on the sidelines. Karen finished, clenching her fists. They keep fighting and we aren't helping. We were just a burden last time. Yuzo felt tears coming to her eyes. Even though we're training so hard, we can't do anything to help. You're both still younger than Ichigo and I were when we finally started fighting low-level hollows. They both looked up to find Uri walking toward them, looking much the same but now with his left bangs tucked behind his ear while wearing a dress shirt and jeans. And the both of us absolutely refuse to let you get involved in this war. Yuzo ran up to hug her cousin while Karen looked ready to argue before Uri cut her off again. Your first real outing should not be in a war. This is the path that Ichigo and I have chosen, so that you can have a chance at peace. Karen still glared and Yuzo wore a conflicted look as the Quincy hugged his family. Now get back to your training. When I take over as captain of the 15th Division, I want both of you ready to be lieutenants. He said with a smile before walking into the Shoten and losing the smile. He seethed while clenching a fist around a medallion bearing the Quincy mark in his latest orders. With Yamamoto. Aggravating as usual. Seeing her does not get any easier. Yamamoto grumbled as he walked away from a Shinto shrine and toward two figures, one being an elderly man wearing dark robes with a beard that stretched to his chest while the other was a far younger-looking woman with purple hair and a purple bodysuit. Scat Hatch, Hassan, it has been a while. He greeted, meeting the two other ancients, beings he had a history with. You never asked for help before Yama-boy. The woman, the Celtic warrior Queen Scat Hatch teased. I was beginning to think that you forgot about us. Enough. The other man, Hassan scolded. Genri Yusai, fill us in on the Quincy matter. What do we know? Not enough. The old Shinigami answered as he opened a Senkaimon with all three of them walking into it. We learned that they were hiding in the shadow of Soul Society for almost 1,000 years thanks to our own Quincy recruit, Urayu Ishida, and a returning captain, Kisuke Urahara. Urahara designed a trap that would seal away the shadowed world and separate our two worlds so that the Vandenreich could no longer spy on us. However, it was not completely flawless as some managed to slip out to the world of the living. Indeed. Scat Hatch added as she shifted her attitude to focus on the coming battles. Too many Quincy came uncomfortably close to Dunscaith and paid with their lives. Unfortunately, their location was unknown to us as Urahara felt that would risk the seal breaking and starting a war that we weren't ready for. We've spent a lot time just cleaning up after our own messes. Better late than never, though you should have done so earlier. Hassan scolded. Indeed. I have turned a blind eye to my realm's own corruption for too long. But the past cannot change, so focus on the present and the future. Yamamoto answered as they soon entered the Siriti, with a black butterfly making its way to the captain commander and informing him of Ichigo's return. There's one more thing I must ask of both of you when this war is over. With Ichigo, introducing characters from Akame ga Kill and OCS from Soul Conviction. He was finishing the last leg of the journey back to Soul Society with 9 new comrades from his trial in another world. 7 humans in Shiakusho, a large muscled man with a thick black pompadour named Bullet, a long purple-haired woman with glasses and a scar on her right cheek named Shili, another man with blonde spiky and a beard but lacking visible pupils named Deidara, a short woman with blonde pigtails and a dark tan named Mei, another woman with black even bangs in the front with a messy ponytail in the back with a scar across her nose named Suzuka, another man with a top-knot ponytail with black and red eyes named Izuo, a woman with long icy blue hair and eyes named Esteth, and 2 Arankar in white garments, Merrick Muyomoru who had spiky dark orange hair with a muscular build like a tiger's, and Myra Tormenta who was a dark woman with long braided gray hair and a slender curvaceous form. They stayed close behind Ichigo as he pulled them along with some Kido threads as he charged forward at high speeds, eager to return to his friends and family before the Quincy War began. Soon he slowed a bit and released the Arankar who flew to his side. Return to Hueco Mundo, the hybrid quickly ordered. There's a good chance that the enemy may strike there first since the Quincy have such a hatred of hollows. Yes, my lord. They answered, branching away as they returned to the ancient home of the hollows and Ichigo's kingdom. Everyone else, get ready. Ichigo shouted as they went through a sudden tear of light and passed into the Soul Society. His companions looked on in surprise at the new world which the hybrid himself focused on the gathered congregation of Soul Reapers with the majority of captains in tow. Esteth herself began evaluating each and every Shinigami in front of them like the general she once was. Master, I have returned. Ichigo said, approaching Yamamoto and bowing before his teacher. Give a summarized report of your activities in the other world, Ichigo. The captain commander ordered. Yes, sir. Ichigo took a deep breath and recollected his thoughts, remembering his time in the Empire. Upon entering the world, I became disoriented and ill due to the vast change in Reishi in the world. Mainly because of how limited it was and how foul it was from black souls that would be sent to hell and hollows from all lost earthbound spirits. I was found and taken in to meet a child emperor of the nation I landed in and learned that the country was facing a civil war. They asked for my help but I tried to stay out of it. So the prime minister that was manipulating the emperor sent 2 of the empire's strongest soldiers after me. Esteth raised her hand to show that she had a part in that. I managed to escape as I needed to recover from the journey, eventually meeting assassins on the other side of that civil war. Once again I was asked to join the war and again I refused, but this time they accepted it more graciously and made a deal. I could use their base so long as I protected it. From there I did my duty as a Shinigami and attempted to distance myself from the war while recruiting as many capable beings as I could, but the Empire insisted on getting me involved by forcing me to fight then General Esteth to prevent mass murders in an attempt to summon me. After besting her in combat, she wanted to learn more about being a Soul Reaper since she's much like Kenpei, in that she craves strong opponents. After a while, I finally got more directly involved and showed the Child Emperor the truth that was hidden from him. After a personal mission that led me to save the leader of a religion, getting deified in the process, I grew a greater connection to the powers of hell from the Kushana that merged with me. After that mission, the Quincy made their presence in that world known and I fully abandoned any pretense of not involving myself since the Quincy were my fight. Before the final battle, Kyoka Suijutsu revealed that Aizen himself did not know her true power due to wanting an equal, thus limiting himself, but also that it alters reality and no one is safe from it. Thanks to that intervention, their world is coming to a new age of unity and peace, and of all the beings I met that were capable of becoming allies, only these 7 became full-time Shinigami. The 2 Arrancar I found I already sent to Hueco Mundo. Yamamoto stroked his beard and sighed. Your morality and strength have always been something I was proud of you for having, but your discipline still requires some work, he said with a mix of pride and disappointment. That will have to wait till later, unfortunately. Now, who from your group goes to which squad? Ichigo thought for a moment. Bullet, Deidara, Izuo, see that scarred man with the eye patch? He said, pointing to Kenpei's Araki. That man is the leader of the main combat division, I want you 3 to join him. Deidara and Izuo smiled viciously while Bullets was more friendly and slightly flirtatious toward Yumi Chika. Suzuka, Mei, you 2 were martial artists and assassins primarily, so you'll be joining the Onmitsuka-do Corps, led by that short girl with the black hair. He said, pointing to Swyfon, who was glaring at him. Ichigo then turned to Shili and Esteth. As for you 2 he didn't say any more when a Garganta opened high above them with a figure Ichigo immediately recognized falling out of it. Ulquira! He shouted as he shot toward his loyal knight who was in his Hogyaku enhanced form and riddled with holes while one of his arms was missing. He caught the falling Arrancar and teleported in front of Anohana, who began administering her treatment with Orium quickly joining her. Ulquira, what happened? Ichigo asked, feeling anxious at seeing one of the strongest Arrancar in such a state. Go. The pale knight managed to cough out, blood spurting from his mouth, while he reached up to pull out one of his eyes. Loss. No chase, destroyed. He said before using his Solita Vista to show them what happened. Awakens version of episode 303 of the anime. Because I want to keep it somewhere. It was an odd sensation. They were so used to being grim with the mindset of coming war and bloodshed that the changes of that day was almost as if the universe changed just so people could relax and have some fun. In the world of the living, the members of Squad 15 decided to just be normal people, going to visit a shrine while buying festival food from the stalls, Yuzu and Karen splurging their New Year's money on candy and other things, bringing a whole party's worth of food and games for the rest of the squad back at the Shoten, and the family members of the Ishida, Kurosaki, and Inu families joined in the festivities. What surprised the teens was finding that their normal but spiritually aware friends also made it to the Shoten to join in the fun. Kigo complained about his sister while Chizuru got into an intense and perverted debate with Lisa about proper erotic appeal until Masaka chopped them in the head. Things were a bit more exciting in the Soul Society. Once the living world customs were done, the Kurosakis made their way to the Shiba estate where a party was in full swing. All the captains, lieutenants, and various seats were in attendance along with notable members of the Shihoin and Kukaki families. In true Shiba fashion, it didn't take long for much of the party to erupt into chaos. An argument and competitive game of Karuta almost ended in a fight to the death between Swyfon and Yusehiro over a card with Yoryuki's cat form on it. Ganju and Ikeku almost got into a fist fight until Iba brought along Sake, which then turned into fighting and drinking. Yuzo, Karen, Homura, and Shizuka got a big tub of rice dough and was pounding away at it to make mochi. Yamamoto, Kiraku, Yukatake, Anohana, and surprisingly Zaraki, were more laid back and enjoyed a cup of warm tea just as Kyokaku set off some newly made fireworks to start off the new year. Leading us to 2 old friends that found a quiet place while everyone else started cleaning up. Been a crazy year this time, hasn't it, Kisuk? The Wurukat asked her old friend as he pulled out a cake and began lighting candles. It has Yoryuki, and now let's move on to the last bit. He handed her a glass of plum wine and got one for himself, clinking them together. Happy birthday, Yoryuki. Happy birthday, Kisuk. They said with a smile before blowing out the candles on their cake, bearing a somber expression in the passing of the candlelight. No one remembered dash. There you 2 are. Ichigo loudly announced as he and the others revealed themselves. Every one of Ichigo's companions, Swyfon, Yusehiro, even Tessai, Hinta, and Yururu came by. We heard it was your birthdays. Why didn't you tell us? Is that why no one remembers? Yuryuki asked, just realizing the possibility. Seriously, that's important information to us. Ichigo scolded as Orium pulled out a much bigger cake with cookies in the shape of Kisuke and Yuryuki. Now, let's celebrate you guys. The two old friends were silenced with gratitude choking them up as they had a quiet but pleasant day, everyone else long tired from the party earlier. Yuryuki got a black cat plushie, some new gauntlets, and a restraining order to keep Yusihiro from glomping her every chance he got. Kisuke got a free pass of 5 pranks on Ichigo, research data on various things, and plenty of blackmail on the other captains. To finish the day, the last present the two received was a framed picture of the two of them with all their friends at their most pleasant photoshopped in with the message, "Thanks for the laughs, the lessons, and just being there. Our favorite teachers." Chapter 99, The Blood War begins. Ulquiorra's POV. In the year and a half since my king left for training in another world, there have been multiple invasion attempts by the many hollows of Hueco Mundo, and every one of them was pushed back by those that protect Las Noches out of loyalty to our lord. Almost a year of invasions came from various Minos Grandes that sought to overthrow the 16th Division that was the Arrancar Division, but then it stopped. Patrols were increased and we were finding fewer and fewer Minos, even in the forest of Jillians. Eventually they came, 2 new Arrancar who claimed to have been rejects and refugees from Aizen's army. They were both male, with one having red swept back hair with upward pointing eyebrows with his mask fragment over his left eye with 3 holes in it, while the other had black and white hair split down the middle, with the right being long and wavy while the left was short and braided with a series of dots across his face, named Ischiaro Ebern and Lutters Freegen. They both came in ragged cloaks and told us that they were left wandering when Aizen deemed them unworthy of his attention after making them. None of us believed them and immediately figured they were hostiles, but we had nothing else to do at the time and thought that we could get any, information from them. Possibly about the Vandenreich. After a couple of months of nothing, Jin ordered us to lighten the watch on them to see if they would slip up. The result was finding 2 Seal Schneiders, and thus we arrested them, finding 3 more Seal Schneiders on their persons and 2 Jinto capsules. The sooner you talk, the sooner this stops. I told the 2 spies as Exequias members continued their torture of Lutters, breaking every bone before cutting it out, while Ebern watched. You were discovered with Quincy gear, the precise tools needed to use what I'm told would cause a large explosion. I need to know where your loyalties lay. Lutters screamed out in pain as a hammer was brought down on his hand, lacking any more fingers to break and remove, before the Exequias began to cut it open and remove the shards. Ebern's response was to spit in my face. No matter what you do, I will never betray my master. You hollow scum. The Quincy Arrancar promised as I calmly wiped my face clean and then proceeded to dig my fingers into Ebern's chest. Your loyalty is to be commended. I admitted as I slowly pierced through flesh and bone, listening to him screaming in agony. But know that my loyalty to my king is just as I stopped, sensing a disturbance in the Reishi of Hueco Mundo. A few seconds after that, everything exploded into light and heat. I felt my limbs breaking away in the force of the sudden attack and quickly reached for my Zanpakuto. Enclose, Mercy Lago. I activated my resurrection, restoring myself just as the explosion ended. Lutters and Ebern were dead, turning into black husks, along with the Exequias that were with me. My comrades among the Arrancar had also released their resurrections as I surveyed the state of Las Noches, which was reduced to black rubble. The entire castle was gone in an instant. What the he dash? Sirachi started before a flash of light shot a hole through her body and split her in 2. I looked over to where the shot came from and almost couldn't believe my eyes, hundreds of Quincy in strange armor with Reishi flying to them and forming a single burning wing. Is that? Let's still. I wondered, remembering what I heard when I was still Aizen's subordinate. The Quincy have begun to move. I realized as they flew toward me another barrage of powerful arrows into the ruins of the castle. The arrows were met with a barrage of Zero as Starkey appeared in front of them in his resurrection. You're trespassing, he said before firing both of his guns at the Quincy, using his Zero Metrolita to fire hundreds of Zero and forcing the Quincy to split up. Soon everything fell into chaos and I could barely make sense of some of the things I saw. There was a gorilla like Quincy that Grimjo was tearing apart with his claws rather hand-idly. I'm ordering the retreat. I remember hearing Jin order, wearing his fox hollow mask as he speared a couple Quincy. But the last thing I remember seeing was Jin in a cage with a masked Quincy holding Grimjo by the throat. I was in my Hogyaku enhanced form, but still my body was mangled. They destroyed our base with a Springer, unleashed a battalion with Quincy in their strongest and sacrificial form, and we're on the run. I had to get this to my king, pray that he returned from his training. The next time I opened my eyes, I saw Ichigo and proceeded to share my memories. That's when everything went black. Present time. Aaron Carr Quincy. Ichigo whispered as Ulquiorra fell unconscious in the hybrid's arms, reverting back to his base form. A quick checkup revealed that the Aaron Carr was still alive but in critical condition. Anohana, do you think you can help him? He asked the best healer in Soul Society as Orium already wrapped the bat in her healing shield. I did get some books on Aaron Carr physiology from Squad 12 in Roka soon after you took over Hueco Mundo. The captain as Orium sped up her healing to help Ulquiorra recover from the worst of his damage. Excellent, the hybrid said as he gently lowered his knight and rose to his feet, and I'll be back as soon as I can. Again you jump head first into an obvious trap. Yamamoto said before Ichigo could open a Garganta. A few Sternritters joined you into Hueco Mundo when Aizen took your sisters, and now a force of Quincy attacked the realm of hollows knowing that you would rush to help your friends and allies. Ichigo, how many times must you fall for these traps until you learn to think before rushing in? This happened before? Hassan asked his old comrade, confusing Ichigo as to who the cloaked man was. The boy needs more discipline. The teen scowled at the man before standing before his teacher and bowing respectfully. I do not do this blindly, master. I'm fully aware that this is a trap meant for me, however if I don't go then we'll lose valuable allies for the war. It was proven that Hollow Reishi is toxic to the Quincy and we risk losing that asset if they destroy our allies. Ichigo then rose and leaned closer to the captain commander to whisper. Besides, I'm sure you have countermeasures already in place. He then backed away. I can't abandon my allies, master. The Garganta opened with Orium following after him. Not without proper preparations. Yamamoto sighed as Swaefo signaled some members of her squad to retrieve some supplies. This attack is evident of one thing, that Waiwak fears you, Ichigo. Above all others, he considers you the greatest threat to him. Because of this he has studied you and means to trap you. Chances are he will attack soon after you leave, so be cautious and finish quickly. Return as soon as you can. Ichigo nodded, taking Orium's hand and the offered supplies before rushing through the hole in space. The hybrid was in such a hurry he forgot to ask where Uriah was as his cousin was absent from the group. Hueco Mundo. The land of the hollows was never a pretty sight, being mostly desert plains with needle-like stone trees and a sky of endless night with only a crescent moon illuminating the land, but seeing the ruins of the once massive palace of Las Noches was still disheartening to the teens. It was a place of order in an otherwise lawless land where only the strongest survived, but now it was torn apart, a testament to how dangerous control over Reishi is in a land made up of spirit energy. Ichigo sent out a Pesquisa pulse to try and find where someone, enemy or ally. Runengunga, the Sand Hollow Guardian of Hueco Mundo, was gone and was likely dead, same with Rudborn. Other Aaron Carr were either still fighting, near dead, or on the run. Suddenly the distance lit up with the telltale signs of battle. Explosions of light from Ceros and Quincy arrows dotted the desert landscape as Ichigo tried to think of his next move. He spied a serpent made of wind with blue beams blasting about with a force of 20 soldats led by 3 in Let's Still. He got ready to charge in when the powered Quincy looked to one of the others and those Quincy went into Let's Still while the previous trio disappeared. I'll figure that out later. Ichigo promised as he grabbed Orium by her waist and Kyoka's hilt. Hold tight. He ordered as he flashed down behind the Quincy force, finding that Dordoni and Starkey were trying to hold off their pursuers but many of their attacks were drained away into the Let's Still of the Quincy. Hato #78. The two Aaron Carr recognized Ichigo's voice and bolted while the Quincy were surprised by the voice from behind, turning just in time to get cut in half by a blade of Kido from Ichigo's swing. Zang Aaron. The Quincy fell apart while the 3 in Let's Still struggled to stay together before Starkey shot them all through the head. Report. Ichigo ordered as Dordoni appeared before his king while Starkey went to help what Aaron Carr remained. Mirai, the wind Aaron Carr started, The Quincy have destroyed your palace, took Rudborn and Roka for whatever purpose, imprisoned Captain Jin, and now Ladies Neelil and Haribel, and Sir Grimjo are fighting the Stern Ritters here. The last we saw of Grimjo was over a thoroughly eviscerated ape-like man before this masked wrestler captured him. Ichigo absorbed this information and looked over the Aaron car with them on the run, Loli, Mainoli, Haribel's 3 fraction, and an unconscious Gantenbin. Who died? Ichigo asked, his voice deathly silent as he remembered seeing Sairachi die in Ulquiorra's vision. That means they were permanently down one member and several other combatants were still out due to injuries. These were the comrades he promised a new future to, and now that future was in jeopardy. I'm sorry, but we don't know the answer to that. We had to move quickly. Starkey apologized, coming over while Orium went over to the injured Aaron car and began healing them. And some of them even have shrifts. I could only make out that one has the power to create fear and another creates doubt. Things have just been a mess. Ichigo silently sheathed Kyoka Suijutsu and pulled out Zanjutsu, releasing their Shikai. Then stay back and try to recover while I start cleaning. The hybrid ordered as his hollow mask appeared. Soul Society. Things had become tense ever since Ichigo left for Hueco Mundo, a grim air hanging over everyone's heads as they waited for the next move. Friends and families were saying their goodbyes in the possibility that they might never see each other again as others got some last-minute practice and preparations in. Yukatake went to Squad 4 to ensure he was in good enough health to fight in the coming war, while Kenpeka went to Crossblades with his wife Anohana, an embrace fitting for bloodthirsty warriors like them. For many friends and comrades no words were exchanged in favor of silent gestures, either because words failed them or because they could not trust their own voices to stay in control. For others, they demanded their words. Shiba family. Looks like we Shiba can't help but get into trouble. Kyokaku said as Ganju came by for a few drinks as she and several others handled the evacuation of the civilians. Guess some things are just unavoidable. Ganju finished his sake and bowed to his sister. Take care big sis. Thanks for all the training. He said, getting up to leave. Hey. Make sure you come back alive, or I'll kick your ass. She yelled in a harsh but caring way. I'll be back for the fireworks. He returned as he left the Shiba house, leaving Kyokaku alone in the house. Kyan would be proud. Kyokaku said with a smirk, before returning to help the refugees. Kurosaka family. Ishine, you better survive this. Masaka warned as the father hugged his daughters goodbye. Our babies were deprived of one parent for too long, so don't you dare die on me and deprive them of their father. Wouldn't dream of it, dear. Ishine said confidently as he released his daughters. After all, I've yet to become a grandfather. Not for lack of trying on Ichigo's part. Who knows? Maybe we'll get lucky once this is all over. He laughed as Masaka bunked him on the head before hugging him herself. I mean it. Make sure you and Ichigo come home. Ishine held his wife. I'll make sure of it. Just then a Senkaimon appeared with Hitsugaya coming out. Captain Shiba, let's go. The childlike Shinigami told his old captain. I'm coming, I'm coming. Ishine sighed as he joined his former third seat. Oh, and Toshiro. If you survive this, then you have my permission to court Karen. He said, making both him and his daughter blush in embarrassment. He never stops. Hitsugaya complained in a whisper as he joined his fellow captain. With Urahara and Mayuri. They've already begun to attack. They turned Aaron Carr into Quincy. They've had enough time to set up a Springer bomb to blow up Las Noches. What else are we missing? Kisuk growled as he and his lieutenant tried to make sense of the matters in the R&D department, the entirety of the Squad 12 division being in a place filled with light to eliminate any shadows. How did we fail to notice any of this? Indeed. Quite irritating. Mayuri joined as he started up the former Quincy android, BG9 now Z9. The new form being dressed in black and white with blades on every limb as well as guns in its arms and on its back. I can't even relish the idea of dissecting any of those Quincy hollows because of how annoyed I am. How much do they know? Would any of our countermeasures work? Urahara actually worried as he began plotting hundreds of new ideas to counteract what might happen. I'm going to program Z9 to gather any and all combat data it can once the fighting starts. Seconds after Mayuri said that, alarms began ringing all throughout the Siriti. It has begun. Both he and Kisuk thought as Nemu appeared before them. Sirs, a report from the surveillance team for the light barrier. They say that the current readings say that the Keto barrier has been down for the past month. This shocked everyone in the room as they all worked double time to get things ready. How did this happen? Is it a shrift? What power could alter these readings? Mayuri theorized while Kisuk took command the moment reports of Quincy attacks began. Alter the Reishi output to 10% and release on my mark. The 1,000-year blood war had begun. Battle. It was predictably chaotic as cloaked Quincy soldats poured from the shadow, the first wave repeating what the force that destroyed Las Noches did by making the first wave hitting hard and fast with dozens of Quincy inlets still and causing as much destruction as they could and killing many Soul Reapers. This forced many Shinigami to release their Shikai and some of the faster ones to be more careful. Byakuya himself immediately used his Senbon Zikura and speed to carefully kill every Quincy inlet still before someone intercepted him, a man with slicked back black hair and a long strand in front of his face with rather pronounced cheekbones in a Sternritter uniform. You must be Byakuya Kuch — the man said before a pedal shot through his throat. As Byakuya was about to continue, he felt a hand on his shoulder. It's rude to interrupt someone when they're talking. The noble held a stoic glare, seeing the Sternritter he thought he killed fully healed. Then the whole Siriti was filled with a black smoke that was derived from Ichigo's hollow-fied Reishi. All over the Siriti, Shinigami felt themselves get partially hollow-fied as their Zanpakuto absorbed some of the hollow Reishi while the air rang out with dying screams of Quincy taking in the toxic Reishi. After that came a silence as many hoped that it was enough to end the assault, but then the Reishi began to thin out faster and soon revealed dozens of Quincy with hollow mask fragments. Toshiro was watching one such Arankar Quincy. Rangiku, report to Urahara that they've found a countermeasure to the hollow gas. The young Shinigami ordered but getting no response. Rangi Deshi turned to find his subordinate with claws through her chest and cutting upward through her collar. Matsumoto! He cried out, watching his partner fall and glaring at the man that dared to hurt his comrade. A man in a hooded jacket with narrow blue eyes and a scar over the left side of his mouth. Don't worry, you'll be joining her. The Quincy promised, flashing his claws while the temperature dropped. Chapter 100, The First Day. Soul Society Battles, Toshiro. The air around us, it's freezing. The Quincy King thought as he kept his eyes on Toshiro, changing into a more adult form before his eyes as an icy mist formed around them. The white-haired captain then shot toward King Du and swung his blade, the Quincy managing to evade and leap away to get some distance. He's faster and probably stronger now. What else changed? The Quincy kept thinking as he readied his claws for battle, soon discovering that his right arm was covered in a sheet of ice and realized how numb his body had become. Toshiro Hichuga is not supposed to be this strong. Is this his Bankai? He was then taken by surprise again when the captain appeared before him again, eyes cold enough to freeze the soul yet held such burning anger one would burst into icy flames. King didn't have enough time to dodge and instead turned his blood venet to the max while his skin turned a metallic gray as he activated his shrift, the iron. The moment the Zanpakuto touched his skin he felt a burning cold spread into his arm, forcing him to take the chance and flash away with Hirankyaku. He got some distance between him and Toshiro, but his arm broke off at the elbow with the stump completely frozen. What the hell is he? The Quincy's mind screamed as he felt fear grip his soul, the captain whose Zanpakuto just now grew slightly longer with a crescent-shaped blade on a long chain. Was this just his aura? How strong is he? The next thing he saw was a massive dragon made of ice wrapping a frozen claw around his body with its fangs coming down to tear through him. The image immediately changed to him wrapped in the chain with Toshiro about to cleave the Quincy in half when a figure in a white hooded cloak took the blade for him and the captain's arm snapped and twisted around with many sickening snaps and crunches, forcing the captain to jump back. Toshiro didn't cry out in pain and only grimaced in response to his mutilation before covering his arm in his ice. Pernida? Did you come to save me? King Du asked, both ashamed at the rescue and grateful for it happening. The now-named Pernida said nothing as it watched Toshiro who continued to glare at the Quincy, the captain's rage barely held in check by better judgment. King Du took the chance to flee, hoping to find someone to restore his severed arm, leaving Toshiro with a far more dangerous foe. The captain and Sternritter continued to stare at each other, waiting for the other to make a move, when a voice called out. Koteki! A column of icy blue energy smashed into Pernida, leaving it encased in ice, and giving Toshiro time to turn his attention to the new arrival, the blue-hair woman named Esteth wielding a massive rapier saber with a skull guard. Hello, Captain Ichigo, I'm guessing? My mate told me about you and that our abilities were similar. I hope we can get along. Ichigo, you always attract the strange ones. Toshiro thought to himself as the ice around Pernida started cracking before shattering and Pernida revealed itself to be a giant left hand with an eye with two pupils in the palm. Ichigo merely prepared himself for the next round while Esteth felt bloodlust rush through her as she readied her blade. Squad 11. As was their way, the members of the 11th Division charged forward to meet the Quincy head-on. Bows and spirit blades clashed with various Zanpakuto as both sides fought with the intent of killing the other as Ikeku and Yumichika led the charge. Every captain was given the same order after the hollow gas bomb was rendered impotent by the Quincy Aaron car: eliminate every Aaron car Quincy and enemy Sternritter, priority 1. Thus, Kenpei Kazaraki left his squad to hunt down said Aaron car while Ikeku and Yumichika led the troops in his stead. 12. 13. 14. 15, 16. How are you doing, Yumichika? The bald spearman called out as he kept score for his game with his friend. I was at 15, now I'm at 21. The third seat answered back as another 6 Quincy fell dead from the vines of his Zanpakuto. This may feel a bit ugly, but even I have times I wish to win. The two grinned at each other as they continued their battles when someone decided to make himself known. This is the strongest combat squad of the Shinigami. A long blonde-haired man yelled, wearing a winged helm with a red cape and black pants, having armored armbands and greaves with a round buckler and double-edged sword with a V-guard and a star emblem on the hilt. How pathetic! He shouted while holding his arms out, surrounded by the dead bodies of Soul Reapers and Quincy alike. Where's your captain? Too scared to fight. Ikeku and Yumichika scowled at the man as the lieutenant stepped forward. Captain Zaraki prefers to hunt down the strongest opponents to fight on his own. Ikeku answered, readying his Hojikameru while Yumichika continued to analyze the man. How about we entertain each other instead? I am Lieutenant of Squad 11, Ikeku Madarame. What's yours? The man smiled and pulled out his sword. Sternritter M, the Miracle. Gerard Valkyrie. The two warriors, having exchanged pleasantries, then charged at each other with the intent of killing their opponent. In the training time before the war, Ikeku managed to strengthen his Zanpakuto, going from wood to metal and making it able to split anywhere along the body and increase the length of the chain connecting it. It was that change to Hojikameru that kept it from breaking against the edge of Gerard's shield as the Quincy punched into Ikeku's gut. The lieutenant's quick defense with the chain did little to stop the force of the blow and was shot backwards from Gerard, the fighting around them pausing to watch the battle between Quincy and Shinigami. Damn, he's strong. Ikeku thought as he stabbed his spear into the ground to slow himself down, Gerard already closing in to continue the fight. And fast. The spear split into smaller sections as Ikeku bent and twisted himself to dodge Gerard's blade while he sliced along the Quincy's gut. Gerard threw his knee up, slamming it into Ikeku's chin and dazing the man slightly, but the lieutenant took the chance to wrap his chain around Gerard's leg while stabbing the blade into his thigh. Gerard retaliated with a shielded backhand that sent Ikeku flying back, though the Soul Reaper managed to keep a hold of his Zanpakuto and the sudden pull threw Gerard off balance. Despite being dazed and battered, something Ikeku was used to from training with his captain, the lieutenant pulled himself back to his feet with the spear and yanked Gerard into doing a vertical splits. Ikeku finished this with charging straight at Gerard and slamming the third end of Hojikameru into the Quincy's face, breaking his nose and a couple of teeth in the process. Unfortunately, Ikeku then felt something cold in his stomach while his Shiakusho became warm and wet. You're quite the vicious one, Ikeku Madarame. Gerard complimented as Ikeku looked down to see the Quincy's sword in his stomach. But you'll never be able to beat me. The Shinigami looked back to Gerard, glaring as the Quincy was fully healed. Miracles do not favor you, but feel honored. I'm among the mightiest of His Majesty's elites and you are about to die by my hand. He ripped the blade out of Ikeiku's gut and was about to swing again, but a group of azure-colored vines wrapped around his arm. "Ikeiku! Order a retreat!" Yumi Chika demanded as his Ruriiro Kyojaku began sapping away at Gerard, but he was barely holding the Quincy back. "Now Ikeiku!" The third seed shouted as Ikeiku pulled on his Zanpakuto with all of his draining strength and cut off Gerard's leg, hoping that a missing limb would take longer to heal as he jumped away from Gerard. That hope sank when a new leg immediately appeared in a flash of light. That's when the Quincy yanked on the vines, pulling Yumi Chika to him, and ran the Shinigami through as well, slamming him into the ground in one swift motion. Ikeiku was frozen, seeing his lifelong friend take such an injury and coughing up blood. Shame, the third seed started with shaky breath. I was hoping for a bow dash. He was cut off when Gerard slammed his buckler into Yumi Chika's head, crushing it like a melon. "Like I said, no miracle will save you from me," the Quincy said as a red aura formed around Ikeiku, somehow stopping his bleeding. "Bankai," the lieutenant said, gaining his 3 blades with the dragon on his axe blade glowing crimson red. "Ryomen Hojikameru," he roared, shooting toward Gerard with an aura of dragon claws forming around the blades. The miracle knocked aside one blade but was ran through with the other, sending him flying back with a massive hole in his stomach. Again he immediately healed, but Ikeiku was on him again, swinging the Guandeo blade part and cutting Gerard into 3 pieces, which soon healed and Gerard punched Ikeiku in the hole in his stomach, sending him flying back into a building which collapsed. "That was annoying," the Quincy said, brushing dirt off of his body while looking stronger than before and losing his helmet. But now to move on to dash, he was cut off when something fell from the sky and cratered the ground in front of him. The dust cleared and revealed Kenpei Zaraki, carrying 5 Aaron-Car Quincy on his blade with a dark-skinned fat man suffocating in his grip. "I thought I sensed something happening here," Zaraki said as he tightened his grip so much that the fat Quincy's head popped off his body upon seeing the state of his 2 best officers. "Take Ikeiku to Squad 4 immediately," he ordered as his squad scrambled to obey as Kenpei threw the bodies off of his sword and glared at Gerard. "I won't disrespect my squad by saying I'll avenge them. Everyone in the 11 knows that your life is on the line when you draw your sword. But I will say that I am a little pissed off at what you did to my lieutenant and third seat." Gerard charged at Zaraki and swung his blade only for it to be deflected by the Kenpei's own blade, the chipped edges catching the Quincy's blade and forcing it aside while Zaraki cut Gerard in 2. Then a large cut appeared on Zaraki's chest. "My sword is hope," Gerard started to explain as he healed. "When hope is damaged, it brings despair. When you deflected my sword it caused a nick in the blade and that damage is reflected on you." Kenpei felt his injury, looked at his bloodied hand, and smiled. He then appeared in front of Gerard, grabbed his wrist and crushed it, tearing away the sword in hand before head-butting Gerard away and stabbing the sword into the ground. "I can't break your sword and you keep coming back stronger every time you take damage," Zaraki said as he removed his eye patch. "Well, get ready to die 1,000 times. Maybe then you'll be worth the effort." Squad 12, Mayuri's Playground. "So, what have we learned?" Kisuke asked his lieutenant while he continued to watch their latest lab rat, a Quincy that tried sneaking in. He was an elderly man with big pink hair, lips that did not cover his big teeth, had a lazy right eye, and was small with stubby legs. The key word was tried as he still set off one of the many traps heading to Mayuri's lab that resulted in his capture and subsequent vivisection. The Quincy couldn't even scream from all the drugs and damage to his throat when Mayuri found his screams too annoying. "If we weren't looking at him, I'd say he didn't even really exist," Mayuri answered, keeping an eye on the subject lest he forget about it. "And I don't mean his odd ability to remove himself from our memories. I mean he, as a whole, doesn't really exist. He's like an idea someone had that was made manifest through sheer thought. Would that be Wywak or another Sternritter though? All of the Sternritter we've seen have displayed so many odd abilities." Urahara continued as he kept a neutral face, even after receiving a silent notification that another trap was set off. "You're right about him," the two heard someone say as the elderly Quincy popped like a balloon with nothing remaining. "He was just a fragment of my imagination." The scientists turned to see a young blonde-haired man in a hooded trench coat with a high collar. "Hello there, I'm Grammy Thaumo, Sternritter V, the Visionary." "Fragment of your imagination?" Are you saying you created that previous Quincy? Does it have anything to do with your shrift? Kisuke asked as he and Mayuri drew their blades, with Gremi not lifting a finger. Yes, my shrift allows me to make anything I imagine into a reality. Wounds heal instantly, the world shifting to my thoughts, anything I can imagine is a new reality. For all the Quincy's boasting, he failed to recognize the glint in Urahara's eyes. How does this imagination work? He asked with a curious smile as he walked up to the stern ritter. Like when you start bleeding from your every orifice, do you have to know the damage? And if so, to what extent? Interesting thought. I've never had to, did you say when? Gremi asked as he felt something trickle from his nose, then his ears, soon tasting copper while something started falling from his eyes. Of course he said when, Mayuri chimed in as he caught on to Urahara's idea, the moment you fully appeared here you set off a number of traps. One of which is a gas that weakens the blood vessels so that they tear from even the weakest amount of force. The visionary began coughing up mouthfuls of blood before it suddenly ended. Well, I guess to answer your question from earlier, I should know the effects I'm imagining to be nullified. The Quincy said as he raised his head back up to glare at the two. Does that apply to the 2,572 different variations of that same gas? Mayuri asked, confusing the visionary again. Because even the slightest change to a genetic or chemical makeup renders the immunity to it pointless. Again Gremi felt himself bleeding and immediately began imagining himself healing. But I wonder about the other gases. Gremi froze when Mayuri said that. Like the one that causes extreme fevers to the point of combustion, the one that causes malignant growths, Urahara listed off with the symptoms soon appearing on Gremi's body, causing him to freak out and lose his focus, which made everyone more active. One of my favorites is where the body begins eating itself with the cells tearing the body apart. Mayuri said with a smile while Gremi began screaming in horror as his body slowly melted and mutated and then everything just stopped. He was suddenly a brain in a domed jar, unable to sense the world around him, unable to think, unable to dream, unable to do anything. I'm a little surprised that this worked. The lieutenant said while Kisuke picked up the brain and gave it a look over. Which, that we manipulated him into using his own power against him by making him imagine all the possible results of the various poisons you made, or that the actual neurotoxin used managed to reach him through this casing. Mayuri had plenty of other poisons, but the main one for his lab was one that targeted the thalamus and hypothalamus, rendering anyone to a vegetative state. The former. Why couldn't he just imagine himself immune to all possible toxins? Both scientists paused while trying to think of an answer. I'm not sure, wanna dissect it and find out? Kisuke asked while tossing Mayuri the brain case. With pleasure. Hueco Mundo, impromptu stage. Masculine. 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 100 Quincy, all powerless from using Let's Still, chanted to the lookater on the stage as he basked in their praise, the cheers being led by a small chubby bald man in blue overalls named James. The wrestler was masked a masculine, a large muscular man in a standard Sternritter uniform with a coat and high collar, but with the difference of a wrestler's belt with the Van Den Rijk sigil on it, with a dull rust-colored lucha mask with blue outlines and a big blue star over his head which left his nose and chin exposed, showing a thick blonde mustache. Inside the wrestler ring was Grimjo in his Segunda Etapa form, beaten and bloody by the Sternritter for the entertainment of the crowd of Quincy and to lure out a high-priority target. Well, Vile Hollow? Where is your king? The masked Quincy asked. 6 Sternritter were dispatched to the land of Hollows with the mission of crippling Squad 16 and luring in Ichigo Kurosaki. To this end, Sternritters F, J, Q, R, S, and U were sent with a small army of Quincy with a few Car of their own to aid in the attack. The Keto barrier that kept the Van Den Rijk trapped wasn't so constricting that they couldn't send a few small groups out before managing to completely dismantle it a month before they launched their attack, Gremi's visionary power being used to make the Soul Reapers think it was still being maintained. After the destruction of Las Noches, the Sternritters immediately began separating the various Car with orders to use each one to lure out Ichigo Kurosaki, killing them when the hybrid finally does appear and assault him with everything they had with the intent to take him prisoner. Whack desired Ichigo for some reason, and the Quincy would make that wish come true, no matter the cost. All this? All the destruction and torture? That was for fun. Vile hollow. Grimjo said as he forced himself back to his feet, coughing from the damage to his lungs in the brutal beating he received. That's rich coming from you. Oh? Something you want to say, villain? When was the last time you actually saved someone? The panther asked his enemy, staggering to the edge of the ring and leaning against the ropes. And I don't mean another Quincy. I mean, when was the last time you saved any regular human from a hollow? Or any Quincy for that matter that saved someone for no other alternative motive? This was answered with silence from Mask while the audience proceeded to boo and insult Grimjo. Cat got your tongue? Some hero you are. You and the rest of the Van Den Rijk are the real villains in this play. While you were hiding, waiting for your mighty parasite king to come back, a real hero appeared. Challenged a stagnant and corrupt society, turning it on its head with the intent of creating a more fair world for those that inhabit it. That's already more than any one of you bastards can claim. Mask felt his anger growing with every word Grimjo spoke, feeling his honor and pride stepped on by that damned Aaron Carr. Who was this monster to decide who was the hero and who was the villain? You damn hollow. Mask roars out as the crowd restarted their cheers, flexing as their cheering empowers him. His uniform blows off his bulked-up body and his mask turns red and black, with him now wearing wrestling shorts with a star-shaped patch of hair on his chest. Wow. And here I thought you couldn't look any more idiotic. Then this happens. Grimjo continued, refusing to show anything but contempt. Die. Star Lariat. Mask roars out as he pulls his arm out to swing a blow that would finish off the weakened Aaron Carr, only to feel his move stopped by something on his wrist and looking to find a blade that pulsated. Report Grimjo. Ichigo ordered, his arm shaking with his blood artery at the max in an effort to hold back Mask's attack with Kyoka Suijutsu. This idiot's strength is connected to the people cheering. Grimjo said before flopping onto the ring. That bald fatty there seems unkillable though. Ichigo nodded while Orium showed up and pulled Grimjo off the ring before beginning to heal him. Well, this should be easy. The hybrid said before pushing Mask away. Ichigo Kurosaki. The Stern Ritter said while glaring at the hybrid. I'm supposed to call for backup, but the hero should bring down the greatest villain by himself. Mask declared before activating his Volstandi, gaining a cape of light with a star-shaped halo. Time to crush you, villain. You're the villain, Mask. The Stern Ritter heard, turning to the crowd of Quincy to find them booing him. You has been. Real heroes don't need people cheering. You're a tool. No. Stop. You're supposed to be cheering. Mask yells out as he felt his strength draining away. Shut up. He shouted before firing a massive beam and killing the entire crowd. Real heroes love their fans. Mask saw his most loyal supporter, his most loyal fan James, regenerate his damaged body and insult him. You're nothing without me. You're a loser. Pathetic. Stop it. Stop it. Mask started begging as he dropped to his knees, trying to block off the jeers, but they kept coming. Even after he punctured his eardrums he could still hear their insults. I'm the hero. I'm the star. I. Mask lost more and more of his muscular form until he shrank into a small stick of a man. Please love me. He begged before everything went silent when Ichigo crushed him underfoot. Did you want this one, Grimjo? The hybrid asked as he wiped the blood off in the desert sands. I'm fairly certain that half my body is wrecked, my king. The panther answered as he slowly regenerated in Orium's shield. Besides, we don't have the luxury of focusing on who got dibs. The two looked out, worried about the rest of the Aaron Carr. Byakuya fight, shortly after the hollow gas was released. Impressive. The Kukaki clan leader said as the black Reishi smoke cleared away, revealing the Stern Ritter in still perfect health. Not many can survive one of Seven Zakura's petals going through their throat, and I can assume even fewer Quincy can survive the hollow gas, meaning your shrift must be regenerative in nature. Such a crude weapon though, isn't it? It really is. The Stern Ritter answered, coughing a few times but was otherwise unaffected. My name is Askinnak Elivar, Stern Ritter D, the death dealing, and you're half right. Byakuya immediately felt himself lose control of his body and collapse in front of the Quincy. My power allows me to control the lethal dose of something I consume, and I've taken in enough reishi to determine how to make it kill you. That truly is a fearsome power. Byakuya coughed out, feeling weaker by the second but still felt his connection to Senbon Zikura. Incapacitate your enemy with your power, then you can take your time killing them. Silently the captain summoned the petals of his blade to his location, surrounding the stern ritter. A smart warrior would then start breaking necks or stabbing through the heart. A skin glared at Byakuya as he began walking toward the downed captain. I prefer elegance to such brutality. I was hoping you'd understand that. Just for my own curiosity, can you regenerate from decapitation? That surprised Askin as he paused to think. Wait, what? The stern ritter was cut off as he was enveloped in a tornado of pink blades, immediately shredding his body to nothing more than mush. The blades returned to Byakuya's hilt, revealing the mess of finely shredded gore that was once Askin. Looks like training my Shikai was the right choice. The noble thought, reflecting of the 100,000 blades he could control in that release, before he began coughing again while his vision grew hazy. His power isn't fading, he thought as he struggled to make his hand point upward and gather the strength for a Kido spell. I am not dying. Not before I repay my debt. Ichigo. He managed to fire off a rather weak shakuho before blacking out, the poisoned reishi slowly destroying his body. Hueco Mundo, Nilil. Two stern ritters went after Nilil, the fear Asnod and the underbelly Nanan and Ajakub. Asnod was a man with long dark hair, dark irises, and white pupils and wore a black face mask with 5 spikes running down the center. Nanana was a dark man with checkered teeth, an orange mask covering his eyes, and 5 spiraling spikes for his hairstyle. Nilil was in her resurrection since the destruction of the castle and was with her Fraxion, Dondakaka, and Pesha. The two were facing Asnod while Nanana boasted that he'd kill Nell in just a few minutes. He was no closer to his goal than when he started. Damn it! How can such a large body be so fast and agile? The underbelly thought as he tried again to observe Nilil's centaur form, only for her to disappear from his sight and just barely dodge another thrust of her lance. Stand still! He shouted angrily while jumping back for some distance. No! She responded as she prepared to throw her lance. Lanzader Verde. She threw her spear which began spinning and gathering reishi, becoming a pink drill and slamming against Nanana's blood vein and sending him flying. He tried to brace himself but the sand's loose grains caused him to entumble, the lance sliding off his hardened skin. Nell, utilizing her sonido to the best of her ability, retrieved her lance and slammed a hoof against the Quincy's chest. I really hate fighting, so often it is simply pointless. But, for the sake of protecting those precious to me, I will abandon any mercy. She raised her lance and was poised to ram it through Nanana's mouth when she suddenly froze, a look of horror on her face. No, 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 please, she said in horror as she backed up and off the Quincy. That was annoying. As Nod said, walking from the broken and mutilated forms of Nell's Fraxion. I kept injecting them with fear and they just kept powering through. Their willpower is impressive for such weaklings. I wonder how that girl inspired such loyalty. Doesn't matter now and back off as Nod. The underbelly growled as he began observing Nilil while she suffers the mental assault. She's mine to kill. Please, don't. She whispered as her mind was ravaged by the thing she feared more than anything. They were weak and you are just a child. A mental version of Ichigo coldly said, dropping the lifeless corpses of her dear friends and brothers with her own self reduced to that of a small child. I have no need for anything as worthless as you. The cold visage of the one she loved and trusted turned his back on her and was replaced with Neutra Gilga and Sealapora, grinning sadistically down at her. You always looked down on me, Neutra sneered while raising his crescent blade, but now, you're nothing. Nilil let out a scream in the seconds of her fear-induced illusions, letting her mind regress to a more animal state where her instincts controlled her. The main instinct was her fight-or-flight response and she had nowhere to run. Rayah! Nilil roared out as she was enveloped in pink light, shocking her enemies. What the Nanana started before being ran through with a lance of pure energy followed by a blast that fried his body and took Asnod's left arm. The fear grasped at his bleeding stump and found Nilil in her Hogyaku enhanced form, eyes full of rage and fear as she threw the underbelly's corpse from her reishi lance and spied him. So this is the power granted by the Hogyaku. The stern Ritter thought as he quickly dodged Nell's attempt to run him through with her lance. We may have underestimated how much power that form gives them. Must retreat for now. He flashed away with Hyrenkyaku, trying to get some distance to rethink his strategy since fear only turned her into a raging beast, when he had to dodge a sudden bala that didn't come from Nilil. Are you running? As Nod saw a new Aaron car, one that looked like a black and white tiger in a human body with a skeletal tail, long saber teeth, and claws. This was Merrick Muomori, one of 2 Aaron car Ichigo found in another world with gravity powers. Didn't you brag about being a master of fear? Are you now afraid? I'm always afraid. As Nod answered as his eyes rolled back to reveal a Quincy cross. But I fear His Majesty's wrath more than any hollow. But I will show you true fear. Totter Foras. The Quincy's skin became bone white along with his cloak, shrinking to show a gaunt near-skeletal appearance for his upper body, his mask tearing away to reveal nothing but teeth as his eyes cried tears of blood. His halo and wings were a ring of spikes with a line of stitches going from his chin down to the bottom of his cloak, and his forearms were covered in black. Look upon me, and no fear. The effect was instantaneous as fear dug deep into Merrick's heart, terrifying him to paralysis. The weight of fear is heavy. The Aaron car whispered as his unleashed his power of gravity, bringing a crushing weight that almost toppled as Nod. The weight of the heart and mind burdened by fear is great, but still a metaphorical weight, as opposed to the weight of gravity on everyone's heads. As Nod somehow managed to glare at his new opponent, despite the near expressionless face, and tried to shoot his Reishi thorns at Merrick only to watch them drop because of the increased gravity around them. You dash. The Quincy screeched in rage before Asiro vaporized him. Nilil roared and fired another blast, this time at Merrick and forcing him to dodge as he released the increased gravitation field. Okay, this might be a problem. He muttered as Nell charged at him with a Sonito, him barely dodging the Reishi lance and being blasted away from the shockwave. I should probably restrain her. The centaur turned toward him and swung her blade, firing a wave of pink Reishi that slammed against him and sent him flying. Easier said than done. The War Tiger groaned before charging at his fellow Aaron car once again. Soul Society, Fate's Scat Hatch. How boring. The purple-haired spearmaster yelled out as she swung her poliarm and sent a group of soldats flying. I leave my home, my students, for this? At least be a challenge. She demanded of the group of soldats and Quincy Aaron car that surrounded her, the Aaron car becoming winged beasts as they activated their resurrections. Humph. A little better. A lion Aaron car shot toward her, the immortal witch dodging with ease before throwing her spear through the beast with enough force to blow it in two and through the crowd on the other side. 4 more Aaron car jumped at her with dozens of soldats choosing to activate their les still forms, forcing Scat Hatch to crouch low and leap high into the air. Too easy. She said before the area she was standing in exploded into ice, skewering anyone unfortunate enough to be close. Next, this. She summoned a ring of red spears around her that shot toward the ground when she thrust her hand forward, creating a ring of explosions that devoured the group that tried to challenge her. So weak. The Queen of the Shadowlands whispered as she landed, summoning another spear to her hands. Damn it, Yamamoto. Why'd you declare Waiwak off limits? She thought in annoyance, trying to understand what her friend was thinking. The 3, no, you and I would be enough to stop him and end this war. Is it a matter of honor? Do you really just want to die? She kept wondering as a new presence appeared behind her. Candace Catnip, one of the 3 Sternritter that was sent to spy on Ichigo and his friends, now in her uniform, which was a pair of short shorts and a sleeveless jacket tied in a way that exposed her midriff and showed off her cleavage. Try this. The Thunder shouted with a ball of lightning in her hand that she fired at Scat Hatch, which the Witch of Dunscath effortlessly knocked aside with her spear. Candace then created 2 large lightning bolts and threw them as well, following with another and another. Scat Hatch kept deflecting each one with a quick swing of her spear. That's it. The Sternritter yelled out as she raised her hand and summoned a pillar of lightning on Skathika's location, forcing her to jump out of the way and into the air where a large mouth shot out to snap her up. Meh, nothing new. The Shadow Queen muttered as she swiped her hand, creating a line of runes that turned into large fireballs that shot into the mouth, blasting it back. There was a cry of pain as it retracted back to a petite girl with chin-length blonde hair with a skirt and leggings as her Sternritter uniform. "Shit. That burns," she yelled, coughing out smoke and groaning from her now charred mouth. "That hurt you, bitch. This is a battle. What were you expecting? That I'd let you eat me?" Scat Hatch asked as she landed, Candace trying again to hit her from behind with another ball of lightning. "Then you're fools." She immediately swung her spear and struck the thunder in the side with the back half of her spear without even looking. "I've lived for over 1,000 years with billions of fights under my belt." She pointed her spear at the two with a dozen more spears appearing around her, with a bunch of reishi balls floating down around her. "Step up your game, kids, and I might have what are these orbs." Instantly after asking that, she was engulfed in a massive series of explosions. "Cutting that a bit close, don't ya think, Bambi?" Candace asked as she found her partner, now in her Sternritter uniform, looking the most professional out of the three. "It'll be fine." "How many so far?" the Explode asked of her two allies. 6, maybe 7 of the Sternritters. The small girl, Sternritter G. Lilt Otto Lampard, answered with some disappointment. "And we don't even know how many soldats yet. Anyone feel like we should include Giselle? She might dash." "Hell no," Bambietta and Candace adamantly stated. "She's a freak." Any further talk was stopped when the rebelware Scat Hatch was blown away, revealing the Shadow Queen completely unharmed with a bloodthirsty smile on her face. "Nice hit," she said as she summoned another spear to dual wield with another 100 floating around her. "My turn." With Tatsuki. She was a martial artist, she was hot-headed, she was ready to throw herself into a fight to help protect her friends, she hated the idea of not stepping in when she knew she could help. In the time before the war she trained under the legendary Sun Wukong and received a bit more tutoring under Yuryuki and Swafon, finally beating the idea of staying back to study and analyze her opponents if she had the chance. That's what she was doing now, watching a woman Sternritter with long black hair and a dopey expression named Giselle Guel willingly let herself get cut up by other Shinigami with what seemed to be lethal damage, only to be unaffected by the gaping wounds as her blood infect those same Shinigami and obey her commands to kill themselves. Forcing herself to stand back as that freak did something so horrible was hell, but now she had an idea to counter it. "Ignite, Hidari," Tatsuki said, releasing her Shikai and gaining her gauntlets and greaves. She then took a breath and focused her energy, getting enveloped in an aura that soon turned red with fire. "Let's do this," she said to herself before using Shunpo to appear behind the Sternritter. "Huh." The Quincy started before Tatsuki slammed a burning armored fist into her face, her jaw cracking as it popped out of place violently. The force of the blow threw Giselle off her feet, which Tatsuki, becoming familiar with high speeds and reaction times, then grabbed and yanked back. When the Quincy was in front of her, Tatsuki threw a knee up and her elbow, cracking her sternum and spine and making Giselle cough up blood. She looked with a misshapen smile as her blood flew toward Tatsuki's face, only for it to burn away in the martial artist's burning aura. Giselle's eyes gaped in shock before noticing another fiery fist above her head. "Funka!" Tatsuki shouted as she punched Giselle's head into the ground, creating a pillar of flames from the strike and burning Giselle, the air filling with her screams and the smell of burning flesh. When the flames died down, Tatsuki grabbed Giselle's throat and threw her against a wall, following it with a barrage of fireballs that she punched at the Quincy until she was burnt black and fell limp to the ground. Tatsuki took a few deep breaths, trying to keep the rising bile down as she flashed away to vomit and recover from the fight. She didn't see Giselle slowly getting back up. "Gah! Damn, that was close," the Quincy thought as the damage became undone, healing her back to just after Tatsuki shattered her jaw, but she was going to fix that as she went to one of the recent corpses. "If I was any slower in activating the zombie, I would have definitely died." She grabbed her shattered jaw and ripped it off her head while tearing off a corpse's jaw and attaching it to her face, completely restoring herself. "She's just as violent as Bambi, almost as cute too." She then adopted a happy and goofy smile. "I can't wait to turn her into a zombie too." Fate battles. 50. Achilles said to himself as he ran his spear through another Quincy soldat. "What are you at, Cu Chulain?" 45. The Greek warrior taunted as the blue-hair Irishman waved his hand, creating a line of runes that shot 6 fireballs at another group of soldats. 52 actually, he said with a cocky smile, resting his spear on his shoulder. Meaning I'm ahead of you. When the battle started, every captain and a few lieutenants went out to find priority targets like Aaron Quincy and Sternritters. This left the foreign allies to do whatever they wanted, so they just threw themselves into battle while the young witch Medea stayed at Squad 4's barracks. Achilles was about to make a retort when another soldat got an arrow in his head, followed by 5 more in quick succession around the two. Are you idiots still competing? Atlanta said, scolding the two as she notched another arrow and fired into the heart of another soldat. This is war. Who cares who gets the most kills? I'm beating both of you by 20 dash. She fired another arrow, 5 anyway. What? I won't lose to a Greek. See you Chula and yelled before rushing off. They were soon alerted about to a loud crack of fire ringing out above them, seeing 2 figures in shining blue and red fighting in the sky. Man, those two must really hate each other. The only other member of their group of foreign heroes that wasn't competing with them, Karna, immediately rushed out to find his rival and they were now fighting high above them. This is supposed to be our fight. Karna roared as he blazed with intense heat, a blade of fire around his lance as he parried bolt after bolt that Arjuna shot at him. That's the way it has always been, just us playing out this damned cycle of hatred between our ancestors. Just the two of us suffer this, and you dare surrender to the pull of an outside force. He closed the distance in a single fiery burst and swung his blade down on his rival, with Arjuna deflecting the attack with his bow and shooting a massive bolt of light into Karna's chest. Did we ask to play this role? The archer returned as he fired arrow after arrow of light energy at the warrior of the sun. I never wanted to hate you, I just did before I even knew you. I didn't ask to be born into this position, I just was and we had this destiny thrust upon us. To hate each other as our forebears did. Karna kept deflecting the arrows and launched fireballs at his rival who then disappeared with Hiranyakku to trap Karna in a web of spread-shot arrows that engulfed him in an explosion of ghostly light. I can't think of a way to end this peacefully because of how much I hate you. So if we're to end this permanently, then let one of us be wiped out from life and death. It won't be me that dies. The pale light was consumed by fire as the area around them became scorching hot. The flames concentrated on one point, Karna's lance, as a gold disc with scarlet metal feathers gave him what looked like wings of fire. And by grace you will not perish for eternity either, my distant cousin. Because damn fate, damn hatred, and damn you for being weak enough to submit. Instead of beating this curse, you ran. Now I have to save your soul so that your next life won't taint the legacy of Arjuna. The heat continued to grow until the roofs began to melt and trees caught fire as Karna began shining like a star. You really want to continue this? Fine. Try and stop me. Arjuna held out his hand and a blue light appeared in his palm. As Sternritteri, the endowed, all beings gift their life and strength to me. With that gift I summon this ancient power. Pashupata. He flicked his wrist and the orb shot up at light speed before exploding into 1,000 massive bolts of energy that looked like falling stars. Brahmastra. Karna roared as heat gathered at his eyes and he fired a beam of fire at the falling missiles, making each one explode harmlessly above Soul Society. Arjuna watched impassively as his attack failed, meeting Karna with a smile as the Sun Warrior appeared in front of him. The golden armor burned away and the spear was cracking with power. Vasvi Shakti. The both of them were engulfed in an explosion that burned Arjuna away to ash and destroyed Karna's spear, the demigod himself untouched by the flames but exhausted from the amount of power he used. Well, guess I'm out of this war. He thought before blacking out and falling. Crazy Indian bastard. See you Chula and yelled out as he rushed to catch his comrade, shielded from the heat by rune magic. Got ya. You freaking ED unconscious, damn it. Achilles and Atlanta soon caught up to him. That was insane. Kind of wish I fought him before this mess started. Achilles said as they began making their way to Squad 4's barracks, the lion archer staying back as she noticed something. Is it me or is it getting even drier? Hueco Mundo. Jin was tired, bleeding from multiple cuts and holes from Quincy arrows that were shot at him while he was trapped in a cage made of reishi by the Sternritter that called himself Quiljopi. Said Sternritter also had his squad of 10 Quincy surround the prison and shoot Jin, who had to dodge every arrow despite the limited amount of space. He was not always successful and was stripped of his Zanpakuto before being imprisoned, so he couldn't fight back. Even Kido was useless as Quilge managed to steal the Reishi away. All he could do was buy time. Ready. Quilge started, the archers readying their bows and Jin getting ready to dodge. Aim. Only the Vizard captain saw a horned hollow with black wings appear in the sky, making him smile. Phi dash. The hollow dropped like a comet, crushing a soldat underneath him, and was revealed to be Ichigo in his Vasto Lord form, and the King of Hollows had surrendered himself to his instincts to defend his territory. Quilge immediately attempted to trap the hybrid in a cage of Reishi, only for the image he saw to fade. Gamelos sonido. The Sternritter realized before hearing a sickening crack and the tearing of flesh as he looked around to find his entire squad quite literally torn apart with a copy of Ichigo at every point, and then all he could see was that horned mask in front of him. He immediately stabbed the hybrid in the chest, only for the blade to break against Ichigo's skin. Quilge could only watch in horror before he was devoured by a Reishi construct of Ichigo's hollow mask. Well, that's something I'll be seeing in my nightmares. Jin joked as Ichigo went over to his cage and reverted to a more human state. The hybrid placed a hand against the bars of the cage and forcibly placed his Ryotsu into it, turning it black and quickly absorbing it, thus freeing Jin, who fell from blood loss and exhaustion with Ichigo catching him. Sorry about your... he was saying before they both turned to where they felt Halibel's Ryotsu suddenly disappear, which was in the middle of a powerful lightning storm. I have to go. Ichigo quickly and gently laid Jin down as he flashed over to where the chaos was, only to find Myra screaming in despair as she overworked herself as she began drawing from her own life energy to release an electrical pulse so powerful it blew back Ichigo and paralyzed his body like a high-powered taser was pumping him full of a city's worth of electrical energy. H had Didu, new number Bieber SS60TH3. He channeled all the electricity into his hands to power the Kido spell, thus dispersing the charge in him. Reikoho. He fired a blast of pure electricity harmlessly into the sky and waited for his body to heal. The air reeked of ozone and the sands still sparked with bits of static as Ichigo eventually forced himself to his feet and made his way to Myra, who was already slowly fading from what she did. Myra. The king went to the female hollow, cradling her as she sensed Orium attempting to speed up her healing of the other Arrancar as the still able-bodied ones moved to his position. Hang on. What happened? She started before coughing painfully. I doubted. The Sternritter, called herself, the question, somehow, made us doubt our strength, our loyalty, our memories. With a shaky hand she reached for the golden locket hanging in her hollow hole in her heart. Made me doubt Masaki. That's enough, Myra. Save your strength. Ichigo ordered, piecing the rest of the situation together. Myra told him her history, that she befriended his mother when they were younger despite being Quincy and hollow, that she had to leave when Masaka was attacked by White and any hollow presence threatened her life, how she promised him to one day return to her friend. The pain of doubting that must have pushed her sanity to the brink and unleashed that hellish lightning strike. And doubting loyalty? That must mean they kidnapped Halibel and brainwashed her. The sins of the Vandenreich keep growing and Ichigo needed to return to Soul Society. The Quincy presence in Hueco Mundo is gone and he needs to move. Myra. Hang on until dash. Just devour me. She demanded while her legs disappeared into dust. I won't make it and I swore to be of use to you, my king. Take what remains of my strength and add to yours. She took off her locket and handed it to Ichigo. Just, make sure she gets this. She begged while tears fell from her eyes. Ichigo silently took the locket and did as Myra asked, ending her slow death. When he finished, Starkey and Merrick were the only ones that made it to him, though Merrick looked a little worse for wear. Your orders? Starkey asked, despite knowing the answer just before Ichigo tore open a garganta. We head for the main battlefield. The hybrid said as they charged through the hole in space, heading for the Soul Society. The trip lasted a few minutes as they charged as fast as the two Arrancar could through the endless space of the precipice world, but it felt like an eternity to the hybrid. They soon found themselves entering a Soul Society in chaos. This is war. Ichigo started before he was shoved to the ground, turning just in time to watch Merrick's head get a large hole in it. Stark immediately aimed one of his guns and fired a concentrated zero at where the shot that killed Merrick came from. "Go where you need to." Stark yelled out before flashing blue and transformed into his Hogyaka form before charging to where the sniper was. Ichigo looked around the battlefield, finding giant left hands attacking wildly, a giant gladiator warrior, and plenty of Ryotsu of people he knows fading away. One in particular demanded his attention as he was warned about it. Master used his Bankai. He thought in horror before flashing to his location. Soul Society, earlier. It wasn't going good for the captain of the 2nd Division, despite all of her training and prep work. In the free time she managed to get for training, she trained with Yoryuki to complete the Shunko form and learned that each Shunko was unique to Shinigami's Reishi elemental type. Hers being wind led to creating a vortex that greatly enhanced her speed, striking power, and maintain her Shunko for as long as she desired. Or it would have, but her opponent almost instantly found a weakness in its form and disabled it with laser precision. She expected the Vandenreich to build a new synthetic Sternritter following their loss of what was known as BG9, but she failed to account how much of an upgrade the next model was. Her opponent referred to itself as BG10. Creative naming is not a skill of whatever passes for a Vandenreich scientist, and it seemed tailor-made to kill both her and Yoryuki. It had a single circular visor that shot lasers, small sentry guns that flew independently of the main body, what seemed like a liquid metal chassis that resembled interwoven cords, and enough firepower to resemble an armory. It was like fighting an instantaneous adapting mech because of the Shrift K, the knowledge. Any amount of data and it would know how everything about the target, or that was what Kisuke suspected it was anyway from working on BG9. It was a reasonable assumption since, from the moment she activated her Shunko, it pierced her wrists and completely cancelled it, then her ankles were shot and her mobility dropped to an unacceptable degree that left her covered in bullet holes. The less said about Omada's condition the better. He was already taken out of commission despite everything he did and it was a miracle he was still alive. Damn it! She cursed, pinned against a wall by multiple tendrils of liquid metal that seemed like they were prodding inside of her veins. Lady Yoryuki would laugh at me if she saw this. She tried to fight against her restraints but it was useless since the slightest motion would tear the insides of her limbs apart. She let out a grunt of pain when the metal shifted and retracted violently as an electrified blade was lodged in the robot's chest, acting as a magnet that forced all the liquid metal to it and revealing the solid metal skeleton within. 2 more spinning blades destroyed 2 of the Sternritter bot's 10 guns, forcing it to jump back as something caught Swafon's arm. "Greetings, Captain." A robotic voice called out as the assassin looked to see her back up. "I am Z9, a mechanized Soul Reaper combat droid derived from the former BG9. Z9 looked like a thinly armored samurai, with blades in any location that wouldn't be detrimental to its movements, and a ring of 6 spinning dual-ended curved glaives floating just behind it. A snap drew their attention back to the Quincy droid as it freed itself of the electrified blade and fired a beam at the pair with Z9 deflecting it with a blade. "I shall distract. Use your Bankai with the hollow pills." Captain Urahara's recommendation. It quickly said while holding off the beam before charging at the Quincy bot. Swafon growled at the thought of doing anything Urahara suggests, but knew only a fool would abandon his advice for the sake of pride. She pulled out a black pellet and absorbed pure hollow Reishi, giving her bony claws, a mask fragment over her abdomen that seemed like a hole, and regenerated all of the damage done. She then flashed to her lieutenant and carried him a safer distance away before flashing back, Z9 and BG10 moving around like mechs in a space battle with how they were moving. Swafon looked for a good stable support to anchor herself, but every building already looked like it was ready to fall apart. She ground her teeth in frustration before flashing back up with an incredibly risky idea. "Z9. Brace me," she ordered as she activated her Bankai. Z9 saw her and seemed to understand the plan, flying to her for a bit before flashing directly behind her and grabbing onto her, Swafon having BG10 directly in her sights. "Jakuho Reikoban!" She shouted and the missile shot forth, almost instantly hitting her target in spite of the kilometer gap. The speed shocked Swafon for the instant before a wave of heat and fire consumed both her and Z9. At a pure pairs dash, Z9 was glitching out, Hollow REI Rishi STSTSTR strengthened the dash. The droid exploded as Swaifo tried to withstand her own empowered Bankai. Eventually she flew out of the explosion, burned black with dozens of shrapnel lodged in her body. Keikisuk. I'm gonna kill you. She promised before going into a coughing fit and knew right away that it was an empty promise. Swaifo. She heard a familiar voice say, and while her vision was fading, she'd never mistake Yoryuki's voice for anything else. Geez little bee. Think you overdid it a little. She joked, but Swaifo heard the fear in her mentor's voice. Hang on. I'll get you to Retsu dash. Lady Yoryuki. I'm sorry. Swaifo forced out, every word unbearably painful and every breath getting harder. Quiet Swaifo, save your strength. The Shihoan demanded as she cradled her protege. I can't keep my promise to lead your squad. Swaifo, that's enough. Yoryuki commanded more forcefully. I hope I made you proud. Lady Yoryuki. Swaifo, shut up. Yoryuki yelled, tears forcing their way out of her eyes as she reached Squad 4. I love Swaifo. Swaifo. Swaifo, wake up. Swaifo, I am ordering you to wake up. She yelled helplessly at the now lifeless body of Swaifo. Swaifo. Retsu came out to the despairing form of Yoryuki Shihoan as she cried over the loss of her student, her protege, her little sister, her precious little bee. Chad's fight, same time. A vicious right hook slammed into the face of Menina's Macalon, a tall, busty, and thin woman with long pink hair, green eyes, and dressed in a skirt and short-sleeved uniform ending in frills, even on her gloves and boots. She was Sternritter P, the power, and her shrift gave her superhuman strength. Strength that was so far being matched by the Fullbringer, Yasutura Chad Sato. She threw her own punch, but Chad deflected it before slamming an elbow into her gut. Your strength is real, the mixed Hispanic teen admitted, but you can't actually fight. It was apparent to the teen that she merely relied on her raw power instead of technique or speed, letting his throw several quick jabs into her stomach before backing up due to feeling like he was punching steel. That hurt. Menina said as her body bulked up greatly, like her skin was being strained to the limit to contain her muscles. I'm going to kill you now. Chad barely had the time to bring a shield up to absorb the blow before being sent flying through the entire Siriti, a shield at his back to withstand the worst of the damage, before finally stopping. And I thought I packed a punch. The Fullbringer groaned as he slowly got back up, just in time to see Menina's about to throw a building at him. He activated both shield arms and charged them, Rishi flaring from the ends of his arms. El Directo! He shouted, firing both blasts at the Quincy and the building. The building was destroyed, but Menina's shot like a bullet toward Chad, slamming her fist into his shield and making a massive crater from the force of the impact. The Fullbringer felt the shock throughout his entire body, the bones in his arms and legs feeling like they were about to snap from the pressure she put on him. Chad felt trapped trying to withstand the power behind Menina's attack, but he remembered the basic ability of all Fullbringer, Fullbring itself. It was more than bringer light, more than a specific object granting them strength, it was controlling anything and everything around them. One just needed control and Ryotsu to do so, and Chad had plenty. He used bringer light to help him push Menina's aside and off him. As her fist slammed into the ground, it sent a cloud of debris into the air, and Chad took the chance to Fullbring the debris to shackle her wrists and force herself into a chokehold, using her enhanced bulk against her. Menina's made her arms bigger and pulled back, cutting off more of her own blood flow, but also made Chad feel like he was about to have his arms ripped off of him. He let go of one and let himself get pulled along by her massive arm, practically passing out from the sudden rush, but he held on long enough to use bringer light to get himself into the proper position to dislocate her shoulder. Ah! She screamed in pain as her bones cracked from the forceful motion. Chad then grabbed her other wrist and slammed a foot against the base of her spine while manifesting his devil arms. La Muert! He charged his fists and threw a series of jabs to send shocks through her body, soon making her black out. Once she was unconscious, he released her. These Quincy are something else. He groaned before seeing a giant gladiator and giant hands attacking the Shinigami. Wordlessly he reached into his pocket and pulled out a Fujikan. It was discovered that a full bringer using the full power of their unique ability drew heavily from their life force, but Nozomi found a way to substitute that with the raw power in a blank artificial soul. Bracing himself for the next fight, Chad swallowed each of the pills and activated his Diablo Gigante, growing in size to match Gerard. But before he could take a single step, a hole appeared in his chest, dispelling his giant form and fall to the ground as his life drained from him. Ichigo, please, hurry. His last thoughts before everything faded. Vantage point. One job, just one job in this battle. That was all he had to do, was that one job. Kill Ichigo Kurosaki. That was the one task assigned to Leal Baro, the first Quincy given a shrift and leader of Waiwaka's Scoot Staffel. He was a dark-skinned man with short white hair and a black X-cross hair over his left eye which he kept shut, wearing a white sleeveless shirt and leggings with dark green furred pants, pauldron, and bicorn hat. Even his weapon of choice, a rifle called Diagram Ram, had a furred body with a plus sign at the end of the barrel and a wide vertical stock to stabilize it. But his ultimate power was with his shrift, the X-axis, a power to pierce through anything in his line of sight. Leal still took the chance to remove any unsavory elements that may threaten the other Quincy, not out of concern for his allies as all Quincy that fell fed their king's power, but out of boredom. The persons of interest, or special war potentials as His Majesty referred to them as, in Kenpei Kazaraki and Kisukura Hera, were unfortunately impossible for him to snipe. Either moving around too quickly or just not in his sight, and it would be detrimental to give up his vantage point. One person close to Ichigo eventually made himself a prime target, trying to get as big as Gerard. Yasutara Sato, Leal took aim and fired, making a baseball-sized hole in the Foolbringer's chest, eliminated. He then sensed two powerful Ryotsu and found two Arrancar with his main target. He quickly took aim, attempting to shoot Ichigo through his head, only for one of the Arrancar to notice and shove the hybrid aside, losing most of his head in the process. Damn! The sniper cursed when a compressed Zero flew straight at him at light speed. The speed and accuracy shocked Leal into opening his left eye as the blast of Reishi washed over him, covering the top half of his body but left him untouched. How shameful, forced to use my left eye. The X-axis had another power, sealed by him leaving his left eye shut, the power to phase through attacks by piercing them with his being. Die. He heard from above him as Stark-A appeared, glowing in blue, burning Reishi in his empowered form as he readied another shot. Leal brought his rifle up to shoot the Arrancar when a scimitar blade cut through it. Stark-A fired another Zero and Leal was forced to open his eye again to avoid damage, closing it once the Zero ended but had to jump away when Kiraku attempted to slash him again. That was terrible of you, shooting Sato like that. The captain as he noted the change in Katen Kyokotsu's mood to Kajinai. That's one of my Kaoruhei's best friends. Stark-A kept his guns trained on Leal but both marksmen kept an eye on Kiraku as he walked about. And you wouldn't like that kid when he's mad. The moment Kiraku stepped on Stark-A's shadow he disappeared, surprising Leal but not Stark-A, who suspected his ally was attempting something. With the window of opportunity the captain gave him, he shot rapid-fire ballast like a machine gun. It was only activating his blood that kept Leal from wasting a third time opening his eye, feeling it an insult to do so against a hollow that already forced him twice. He flashed away with Hiran Kyaku and landed some distance away. White. He heard from underneath him as Kiraku sprang out of his shadow and swiftly cut off a leg, hitting the white part of the Quincy's leggings. He tried flashing away again before Stark-A appeared behind him. Match. The Arrancar charged a Zero, but didn't release it when he noticed Leal's open left eye. That left eye prevents you from being harmed, doesn't it? Coyote guessed it after seeing it happen the second time, but the third would confirm it. How infuriating. Leal said as all three landed while the crosshair on the Quincy's left eye began to glow. To open my eye 3 times to you. You are correct, but now nothing can hurt me. And I will kill both of you for this unholy transgression you've committed. Jalil. He flashed white with a fleur-de-lis pentagram and revealed a robed figure with 8 wings of golden light with 3 holes in each with a giant halo above his head and white lines on his face. Is that supposed to be intimidating? Stark-A asked as he and Kiraku prepared to fight. Because you look ridiculous. Squad 4 Barracks. It was a nightmare. Despite all their prep work and training done, casualties just came pouring in from unseated officers to lieutenants. Anohana was almost about to thank her luck that not a single captain needed her care before Yoriyuki came in too late to save Swafon, making her wonder how many more unlucky souls were out there that her squad would be unable to reach. When Yamamoto activated his Bankai, her concern grew even more as she prepared to lose an old and valued friend. She even had to make the difficult order to focus on those that they know they could save among the critical cases. She had the ability to help with Minagic, but she couldn't use her Shikai out of concern that someone may strike when she was without her Zanpakuto. A concern that validated itself when a male Quincy with long blonde hair and a Sternritter uniform appeared in her squad's courtyard. "Oh my, this is an unexpected visit," she said, maintaining a pleasant smile as she unsheathed her blade. "You must be quite confident in your abilities to so brazenly set foot in my hospital. Especially since you're an enemy. This is something I could only do now," the Quincy said as he walked toward Anohana without fear. "When His Majesty is without his omniscient sight and while he is busy killing your Captain Commander." Final fight. Yamamoto waited for the Quincy Emperor, waited for his destined rematch, waited for the end. Kojiro, his loyal right hand, stayed with him determined to fulfill his duty and Yamamoto's lieutenant. Even when a Sternritter called Discroll, the Overkill, appeared to fight him, Kojiro did not abandon his captain. Even after becoming exhausted from a stubborn opponent and the use of his Bankai, he stayed, refusing to abandon his post. And Yamamoto waited, knowing that he would be coming to him soon. That patience was rewarded when his old enemy appeared. He looked almost exactly as he did 1,000 years ago, tall with long black hair, broad chin, reddish-brown eyes, long face with pronounced cheekbones. The only difference was a bushy mustache and mutton chops, but he was still the same Waiwak from 1,000 years ago, wearing a white double-breasted trench coat covered in a tattered maroon-black cloak. 1,000 years ago, myself and the first generation of the Godai beat you into submission to the point you had to hide and lick your wounds for the next millennium," Yamamoto stated as his cane revealed his Zanpakuto. "It's truly telling of your depravity how just the sight of you, even after 1,000 years, fills me with such anger and hate." The area around him erupted into fire as he continued to blaze with the flames growing higher and higher. "But this will be the last time either of us sees the other. Do you believe yourself able to win this fight?" Genri Yusai heard from his left, looking to find another Waiwak. "I did lick my wounds, but I also made sure to gather my strength. You, on the other hand, grew old, gentle, and weak. The Captain Commander from 1,000 years ago would have wiped out entire clans from breaking the law, would have reduced his own to ashes without a second thought instead of letting a long and flawed justice system drag it out. The Genri Yusai Yamamoto from 1,000 years ago was far harder and far stronger. So imagine my disgust when that powerful figure turned into such a tired old wretch." A third Waiwak appeared behind Yamamoto. "But, in knowing of my return, did some of that old fire come back? To do whatever it took to win." The fire around the Captain Commander compressed onto himself. "I have gained no artificial means of strength, Waiwak. I have no illusions of seeing tomorrow and will fight you to my fullest ability," Bandesh Yamamoto said as Ryujinjaka became an ancient, weathered sword, damaged by fire and smoking. At the same time, all three Waiwaks pulled out a Quincy medallion and attempted to steal the Bankai of the ancient dragon, to ultimately no effect. "Kai, Zanka no Teiki. I have no means of strengthening myself, Waiwak, but I did ensure this power would never become yours. It's my parting gift to my successor." In the month before the battle, Yamamoto wrote his final requests, what he would leave to who, and drank a vial of Ichigo Kurosaka's blood, consigning his power and blade to the future Suteiko. But until that time, it was his for one last battle. Truly spiteful Yamamoto. One of the Waiwaks said as all three attacked, one firing a spirit arrow while the other two charged in to swing their blades. One blade lost half of its body as it finished its arc, another blade collided with Yamamoto's Bankai and started to become warped while the hand that held it started to burn, and the arrow was caught by Genri Yusai and disintegrated in his touch. After the failed strike, all three Waiwak backed off to figure out what happened. The one that lost his blade to West cannot be the real Waiwak. The Captain Commander thought as he tried to figure out which one was the actual Waiwak. Even if Zanka no Teiki's power burns away anything in an instant, the real Waiwak would find some way to defend against it for as long as he could. His eyes drifted to the only Waiwak that was unharmed by his flames. The other one is a candidate for withstanding East for as long as he did, but would Waiwak willingly put himself in harm's way? The two that managed to have some resistance to Yamamoto's heat attacked again, shooting arrows and sword slashed, both trading who was attacking and who was assisting, putting Yama on the defensive while he still tried to figure out who was who when the third Waiwak restored his blade and jumped in as all three began shifting their motions and positions. "Captain, I'm sorry for my weakness," Kojiro thought as he tried to use the power of his Koko Gonryo Rikyu, but the absolute heat and dryness in the air left no charge for him to utilize and was left with his pike sparking as the only source of conductive material. Yamamoto himself continued to try and determine which Waiwak was real when the lieutenant noticed one of the Waiwak smirking confidently as it summoned an arrow, this one brimming with power. "Not if I can stop it," Kojiro promised himself as he charged at the lone Waiwak. A charge ended by a sickening series of cracks and tears as Sasakabe's body was twisted to the point that was torn apart. What was Yamamoto glanced at the sound and found Kojiro's broken form with the unharmed Waiwak. "There!" he shouted, stabbing the tip of his blade into the ground. "Zanka no Teiki, Minami, Kaka Jamanakushi Daizojin," he shouted as he summoned an army of skeleton, the ashes of all the people he killed with his flames, and left them to handle the two Waiwakas that were attacking him. "This clinches it," he thought as he saw a look of recognition and horror pass both the Waiwak faces. The real Waiwak cared nothing for the people under his command, would make sure he was protected, and he will pay for what he did to my lieutenant, he thought in fury as he charged for the lone Waiwak, who readied an arrow. "Zanka no Teiki, Kita, Tenshi Kaijin," he roared as he swung at the lone Waiwak, only for it to cut through someone else. "Ishida!" Yamamoto yelled in shock as Urayu instantly appeared between him and Waiwak in a Stern Ritter uniform and lost most of his gut from the Captain Commander's attack. "Sorry Captain Commander. I must do this for the Quincy." Urayu apologized as he was instantly healed and Yamamoto was now missing much of his torso, the heat now dropping as Yamamoto felt the impact of such a mortal injury. So much so that his left shoulder was then blown off by an arrow from the Waiwak he was trying to attack while a broadsword made of Reishi slashed Zanka no Teiki in half, disabling the Bankai and bringing in the rain. "Good work Lloyd." The Waiwak with the burned hand thanked the other two as they nodded their thanks for their lord's approval. "And you too Urayu. I actually doubted you were capable of doing this." Urayu bowed his head to the Quincy Emperor. "Like I said, I do what I must for the future of the Quincy. And we shall prosper for it." Waiwak then turned to face his rival then jumped away immediately along with the rest of his Quincy. Was that his true speed? Waiwak wondered as Ichigo looked upon the dying form of his master and mentor. "Ichigo, so you've finally returned, a pity." Yamamoto thought as he looked into the eyes of his young student, unsure if his eyes were wet from disbelieving tears or from the rain. "It seems like I can't speak. Must have lost my lungs, and my vision is playing tricks on me now." The image of the hybrid he knew was switching between him and an older, more confident, and stronger Ichigo with 3 blades at his hip. "This is honestly a better final sight than I deserve. But I know I'm leaving Soul Society in good hands." The dragon smiled and held up what remained of his blade and Ichigo slowly took it into his hands as he figured out what Yamamoto was silently telling him to do. In his eyes, the future Ichigo returned the smile with an expression that said "I've got this." In reality, Ichigo bowed his head as tears started falling down his face. "Goodbye. Goodbye." The two silently thought to each other as Ichigo felt Yamamoto's life fade. "Auswalin," he said, barely a whisper, as Yamamoto's form was consumed in black fire that was absorbed into Ichigo, leaving a dead Genryusai Yamamoto. Still standing, still smiling, as he knew the future was safe. Check the description for the links to the author.